Teak-tock sounding. The blonde woman and her armored companion walk through a rose garden under a dim lantern light. In the temple, the blonde woman tells the purple-haired man he may finally cease his prayers. Surrounded by lilies, the blonde woman offers a gentle smile during a moment of serene contemplation. The purple-haired man is deeply moved by the kindness of Mrs. Rayfian walking past stone dungeon bars. Suspended by glowing chains in a cold cell, a bedraggled woman is branded a monster. Gagged and bound, the brown-haired prisoner glares with intense, tearful hatred at her unseen captors. The blonde woman and her knight arrive at the cell, greeting the captive, Dina, with cold mockery. Complaining about her busy schedule and weakening voice, the blonde woman looms over the helpless prisoner. Holding an empty flask, the blonde woman reveals she requires Dina's help to replenish her fading power. The blonde woman scolds the shocked Dina for producing a smaller quantity of essence than before. Khaled, the blonde knight, kneels and asks the holy lady for permission to perform the grim task himself. The blonde woman smiles and grants Khaled permission to extract what is needed, while Dina watches in fear. The blonde woman commands Khaled to collect the essence correctly, as she requires more this time. A holy sword glowing with divine light and rose petals is unsheathed before the horrified, bound Dina. A sharp splash sounds as Dina's arm is cut, and blood splatters across the dark dungeon wall. Dina cries out in agony as Khaled coldly drains the blood from her freshly opened wound. The blonde woman catches the glowing red liquid in her flask, labeling it the essence of a saint. The glass flask is filled with the shimmering red liquid extracted from the suffering prisoner. Drinking the red essence directly from the flask, the blonde woman absorbs the stolen power with a satisfied look. Radiating intense holy magic, the blonde woman taunts the drained Dina for her incredible, innate strength. Looming over Dina, the blonde woman claims ownership over everything Dina has, mocking her very existence. Grabbing the gagged woman's chin, the blonde woman cruelly demands to know if she understands her place. The blonde woman tauntingly suggests that Dina pray to the goddess if she finds her situation unfair. Turning to leave, the blonde woman dismissively suggests that perhaps the goddess will forgive Dina's sins. As she and Khaled walk away, the blonde woman leaves Dina with a mocking final farewell. The scene shifts to the Austin Empire, a golden era marked by prosperity and divine light. History reveals a time afore the empire was blessed, showing the figures who shaped its early days. Rampant monsters and deadly epidemics once plunged the world into a hopeless age of constant death. Fire consumes the city as citizens perish in the streets, leaving no room for hope or survival. In the midst of the monster-ravaged ruins, a sudden and brilliant light begins to descend from above. A blinding flash erupts, signaling a turning point in the darkness that had consumed the land. The divine light expands, incinerating the shadows and bringing a long-awaited salvation to the people. Governor Espositos arrives as a ruler of light, leading a cavalry to restore hope to the hopeless land. Cheers of "Long live Governor Espositos" echo across the battlefield as the monsters are finally repelled. A man in royal robes announces the building of a temple to honor the saint who saved them. An endless era of peace begins as citizens walk freely through the grand, sunlit city of the empire. Back in the dungeon, maids whisper nervously as they approach the heavy wooden door of the secret cell. Annie is horrified to discover the bound monster, while the older maids dismiss Dina's humanity entirely. Ignoring Annie's shock, the older maid prepares to force soup down the restrained prisoner's throat. Dina uses her remaining strength to mentally command Annie to free her from her bindings. Annie approaches the prisoner in a trance, ignoring the warnings of her companions to stay back. Removing the gag, Annie is met with Dina's bloody smile and a chilling word of thanks. Desperate to escape, Dina bites her tongue to end her life, leaving the maids in a panic. With a sudden gasp, a young Dinah wakes up in her past, reeling from the vivid nightmare. Sweating and terrified, the young girl looks around the room, struggling to distinguish reality from her dream. The young blonde girl stares at Dinah with a mixture of concern and mild surprise. In the temple training room, the pristine blonde girl sits beside the disheveled and traumatized Dinah. The scene lingers on the two girls as they sit together in the quiet, sunlight-filled training hall. Noticing Dinah's distress, the blonde girl asks her why she looks so unwell today. Dinah flinches violently as the blonde girl reaches out to touch her, her past trauma still fresh. Dinah sits despondently on a bench, dismissing Raffian's feigned concern while thanking her for her suspicious interest. Raffian maintains a mask of kindness, smiling warmly while insisting that their shared friendship makes such care natural. A traumatic memory flashes of Dinah pinned to the floor by guards, desperately begging Raffian for her freedom. In the vision, Raffian mocks Dinah's desperate cries for friendship, while the prisoner weeps in total, helpless despair. Raffian's true, cruel nature is revealed as she laughs, calling Dinah a stupid orphan she never truly befriended. Looming over her broken victim, Raffian cruelly reminds Dinah that they belong to two completely different, incompatible worlds. Back in the present, Raffian feigns worry over Dinah's pale complexion while standing amidst the temple's blooming roses. Raffian gently pats Dinah's head and suggests she rest, while the traumatized girl remains silent and deeply unsettled. Dinah agrees to take a break, her face shadowed by her hair as Raffian watches her retreat with interest. From the shadows, other temple candidates whisper spiteful gossip about Raffian's inexplicable love for the dirty, unworthy orphan. Dinah approaches an official, claiming she has a headache and needs medicine to escape the suffocating presence of others. She is cruelly reminded of her status as a talentless orphan who must work harder than the other children. Retreating into the isolation of a room, Dinah closes the heavy door as a soft click signals her privacy. Overwhelmed by the repetitive cycle of her suffering, Dinah collapses as her spirit wavers under the weight of regression. Dinah questions why she is forced to return to life repeatedly, unable to die even when she desires it. Staring with intense, weary eyes, she realizes this isn't the right time to give up as her resolve shifts. Reflecting on her many returns, Dinah notes that the temple remains hauntingly unchanged, regardless of how many times she regresses. Her hand rests upon a book as she meticulously considers the timeline of her past lives and her next move. Dinah recalls 13 previous returns, noting she always regresses to April 382, just before the current saint's inevitable death. She warns herself against the poison of hope, knowing that expecting change will only lead to another devastating betrayal. Locked within the temple walls, Dinah laments her inability to escape the hellish fate reserved for all orphan candidates. Driven to the brink of desperation, Dinah holds a knife, her eyes wide with the terror of her own intent. She attempts to end her life, but her innate holy power erupts in a golden glow, instantly healing her. Dinah realizes her body cannot die while it possesses holy power, leaving her trapped in a prison of immortality. Silent and brooding, she understands that finding a way to die within the temple's confines is an impossible task. Staring at a statue, Dinah reflects on her childhood when she actually loved this place before knowing its secrets. A memory of her past as a starving beggar reveals the desperate, hungry life she lived before the temple. Her life changed forever when a group of priests discovered her latent holy power among the common street orphans. An elderly priest smiled warmly at her, yet his kindness masked the dark, exploitative future awaiting the young candidate. Despite the warmth the temple initially provided, Dinah now recognizes the cruel price she was forced to pay. Standing before the divine statue, Dinah questions why the goddess granted her power only to bring her such misery. She pleads to be taken away from this earth, her back turned to a world that has only betrayed her. Dinah remembers an upcoming temple celebration, an annual event that draws the most powerful figures of the Austin Empire. She realizes the festival provides a unique opportunity to find the one person capable of ending her cursed life. Staring at the spear held by the statue, Dinah's mind focuses on a singular, dark objective: finding a way to die. The temple grounds bustle with activity as maids and apprentices prepare for the grand festival under a bright sky. Carrying a basket of apples, Dinah considers the festival guests, specifically the 4 great aristocratic heads required to attend. Her thoughts settle on Archduke Dehain Theresia, a man feared as a merciless assassin, obsessed with war and slaughter. Dinah plots a dangerous gambit, reasoning that attacking someone as dangerous as the Archduke would lead to immediate execution. Thudding to the floor, Dinah spills her basket of apples across the hallway, creating a deliberate scene of clumsy chaos. The blonde apprentice, Khalid, rushes to her side and asks what happened as he helps gather the scattered fruit. Dinah avoids his gaze while apologizing, her mind filled with the bitter knowledge of his future, cold-hearted betrayal. She reminds herself that her holy power forces her to seek death at the hands of the monster Archduke. Khalid Demroy, the son of a famous aristocrat and the favorite apprentice, greets her with a polished, gentle smile. Dinah recalls her former affection for him, while in the background, Khalid walks away with a companion. Her memory shifts to the cold betrayal, where Khalid knelt before Raphian, ignoring Dinah's suffering in the dungeon. Khalid's indifferent gaze in her memories confirms his identity as a hypocrite who never once tried to save her. Back in the present, Dinah glares at the hypocrite with pink, hate-filled eyes as she struggles to maintain her composure. Khalid reaches out with feigned concern, asking what is wrong, but Dinah coldly insists that she is perfectly fine. Surprised by her abrupt behavior, Khalid watches as Dinah hurries away to continue preparations for the upcoming temple celebration. Camilla and Ellie excitedly greet Mr. Ben as he walks through the grand, sunlit hallway of the estate. Ben returns the greeting with a gentle smile, sending the 2 maids into a fit of giddy, blushing squeals. As Ben walks away, the maids whisper about his 10-year service to the Archduke and his absolute perfection. Known as Ben Teresia, the man who knows everything, he stands composed amidst the temple's blooming roses. Despite his pleasant exterior, a heavy, foreboding atmosphere momentarily flickers across Ben's smiling face as he considers his duties. Ben questions the Archduke Dehain Theresia about his choice of black attire for the upcoming Holy Temple Festival. Ben expresses concern over the breach of protocol, noting the Archduke's intentionally strained relationship with the religious authorities. The Archduke silences Ben with a cold, terrifying glare, forcing the sweat-drenched aide to immediately back down. Young Judy shouts for his father as the Archduke and Ben descend the mansion's grand, red-carpeted staircase. Judy, covered in bandages from a race, dismisses his father's questions about his constant fighting with a wide grin. The studious Denise Theresia promises to watch over his brother while the Archduke attends the official temple celebration. Before leaving, the Archduke offers gifts, Denise requests a limited edition book, only available at the exclusive temple event. Judy bursts with excitement, claiming that what he truly needs is something entirely different from a mere book. Judy dramatically begs for a little sister, but the weary Archduke dismisses the request as another annoying prank. Seeing his father's cold indifference, Judy drops the act and watches silently as the Archduke prepares to depart. Denise notes that his father never truly listens to their deeper requests, resigned to the usual lack of understanding. Stopping, the Archduke firmly tells Judy he will provide any maid, but never a sister for the twins. The Archduke's bluntness leaves the room cold as he reminds Judy that they do not have a mother. In a rare moment of awkwardness, the Archduke asks Denise if he truly understands why a sister is impossible. Denise shocks his father by suggesting there is a way, while Judy imagines a happy family in his thoughts. Denise confidently asserts his plan, holding his book as a sign of his researched and calculated resolve. A horse-drawn carriage carries the Archduke through the lush, sun-drenched forest toward the Grand Imperial Temple. Seated inside, the Archduke stares out the window in deep, silent contemplation regarding his children's strange, repetitive request. Ben tries to soothe the Archduke's thoughts, attributing the children's behavior to simple whims, yet the Archduke reconsiders. Close-up of his eyes reveals the Archduke's guilt over using material wealth to compensate for a mother's absence. He realizes that while they have endless toys, he cannot provide the affection or family bonds they truly crave. A dropped teddy bear symbolizes the twins' lonely upbringing, marked by a complete lack of real emotional attachment. The Archduke hopes that finding a good child to bring home might finally teach the twins about real bonds. Ben remains uneasy, trusting his sharp intuition that something significant is about to change during this temple visit. Arriving at the massive temple, the Archduke finalizes his decision to find a suitable child to adopt today. High-ranking officials and nobles gather in the vast hall as the temple's sacred celebration officially begins. The Archduke sits through the ceremony with an air of profound boredom, disconnected from the religious proceedings around him. Watching from the shadows, Dinah realizes that approaching the heavily guarded Archduke for her plan will be nearly impossible. A red-haired noble candidate named Sarah rudely interrupts Dinah, ordering her to fetch chairs from the warehouse immediately. Dinah stares blankly at the bossy girl, her empty expression further irritating the arrogant and demanding Sarah. Clenching her robe, Dinah reflects on her past life of silent obedience while struggling with her current, growing defiance. Sarah continues to berate the group of orphans, asserting her dominance during the chaos of the temple festival. Sarah screams at Dinah for her perceived arrogance, while Dinah mournfully reflects on a life she never chose. Panic seizes Dinah as she realizes the Archduke has suddenly vanished from his seat during the heated argument. Desperate, Dinah scans the bustling hall and finally spots the Archduke's distinctive cape as he exits the building. Sarah aggressively grabs Dinah's arm, demanding to know where she thinks she is going during their confrontation. A superior intervenes, and Sarah quickly feigns innocence, claiming she was merely telling the girl to sit down. Sarah whispers a vicious threat, ordering Dinah to agree with her lie or face dire consequences later. Dinah quickly complies to escape, focused entirely on catching the Archduke before he leaves the temple grounds forever. Bolting away, Dinah ignores the calls behind her as she frantically searches for any sign of her target. She stops at the edge of the courtyard, her heart racing as she looks out over the grand architecture. Dinah's pink eyes widen with intense focus as she finally catches sight of her goal across the garden. The Archduke walks away toward the exit, unaware of the desperate, gray-haired girl watching him from the balcony. Gripping her chest, Dinah resolves that she must seize this single, fleeting opportunity to change her destiny. With a sharp tut, Dinah launches into a sprint, determined not to let her only hope for escape vanish. Looking toward the Grand Temple, Esther resolves to find a life where she is no longer bound by anyone. Her brown hair catches the light as she gazes upon the distant, imposing spires of her former home. Inside a lavishly decorated room, the Duke and his attendant meet with two nervous, high-ranking priests. The dark-haired Duke remains calm while his attendant watches the priests with a sharp, calculating gaze. Beads of sweat roll down the priests' faces as they exchange a worried, silent glance under the Duke's pressure. The Duke admits that while Saintess candidates are precious, he has an exception in mind for his request. His expression hardens as he explains that the outcome depends entirely on which candidate is chosen. High-angle view shows the Duke leaning forward, questioning if the priests have anyone specific in mind for him. Closing his eyes with cold finality, the Duke simply speaks the name Dinah into the tense room. Confusion ripples through the priests as they frantically flip through records, having never heard of anyone named Dinah. The priests hesitate, calling her a lowly orphan, but a terrifying aura flares as the Duke threatens their tongues. Chibi versions of the priests shake in absolute terror, letting out a distressed groan as the pressure becomes unbearable. Breaking the tension, the brown-haired attendant laughs joyfully and declares they will take the child regardless. Smiling slyly, the attendant mentions a small gesture of goodwill to ensure the priest's cooperation. A sudden slap sounds as the attendant presents a massive donation, causing the priest's eyes to bulge in shock. Leaving the room, the attendant cheerfully tells the priests they are counting on them to handle the rest. Now clutching the heavy donation, the Chibi priests bow frantically, their greed completely overriding their previous concerns. Walking down the hallway, the Duke sighs, secretly skeptical of his attendant's overly dramatic methods. In the shadows, the corrupt priests whisper about splitting the windfall for themselves instead of using it for the temple. In a flashback, young Esther stares at her hands in disbelief as a wound miraculously heals before her eyes. Standing by a window, the young girl wonders if she is truly allowed to step out into the world. Her reflection stares back as she reflects on how her divine power once kept her trapped within the temple walls. Looking at her packed bag, she warns herself not to expect kindness, as nobility is fickle and cruel. Images of the Duke's twin sons, Dennis and Judy, appear as she contemplates her uncertain future in their home. Memories of faceless nobles pointing fingers and mocking her status as a lowly orphan haunt her mind. Huddled on the floor, the young girl is consumed by despair, wishing only for a way to die peacefully. A stern nun instructs Esther to comply with the Grand Duke and never return to the temple again. The nun's eyes narrow sharply as she warns that Esther will be completely alone if the Duke abandons her. Esther looks down, feeling pitiful as the nun declares she no longer belongs to the temple's sanctuary. Tears well in Esther's eyes as she mourns the loss of the place she once cherished as her home. Ravian, the blonde Saintess candidate, approaches the weeping girl with an unreadable expression. Ravian questions where Dinah is going at such an hour, her red eyes fixed on the younger girl. The nun quickly interjects, claiming she is taking Dinah to pray for the Saintess's health. Suspicious, Ravian asks why the nun is taking Dinah out right now, sensing something is being hidden. Young Esther stands in silence, her eyes shadowed as she faces the girl who will eventually become her enemy. The nun reveals the truth. Dinah is being sent to live at Grand Duke Tercia's manor immediately. Ravian's face freezes in shock as she repeats the news, unable to believe the Duke chose Dinah himself. Putting on a fake, flowery smile, Ravian hugs Esther and tells her to feel free in her new home. A quick dash follows as Ravian suddenly grabs Esther and pulls her toward the temple gardens. Ravian's grip tightens painfully on Esther's shoulders as she prepares to reveal her hidden, malicious thoughts. Dropping her mask, Ravian asks with pure venom why the Tercia family would want a thing like her. Ravian's eyes glow with malice as she mocks Esther's weak divine power, finally showing her true, cruel nature. Sensing she overstepped, Ravian lets go and claims it was just a slip of the tongue. Ravian tries to act sad, but Esther glares back, no longer fooled by the girl's manipulative acting. Surrounded by flowers, Ravian blushes and puts on a show of innocence, pretending to be a dear friend. Esther scoffs inwardly at the blatant lie, remembering how Ravian never truly cared for her. Rage burns in Esther's pink eyes as the memory of Ravian's betrayal fuels her desire for vengeance. Vowing revenge, Esther's heart hardens against the girl who pushed her to the brink of hell. The image of their forced childhood friendship contrasts sharply with the deep-seated hatred Esther now feels. Esther wishes Ravian a future filled with the same crushing despair she once endured in her past lives. An ominous curse looms over Ravian, wishing for a future filled with smile-robbing despair. A sharp, sudden slap echoes as Ravian strikes Esther, leaving the girl in a state of shock. Esther stares blankly as she realizes the terrible wish has been completed. Wearing a cold smile, Ravian thanks Dinah for her help in fulfilling the dark request. Esther glances back at the Grand Temple, confused by the strange and unsettling encounter she just witnessed. Thinking about Ravian's arrogant gaze, Esther finds her former companion's behavior increasingly annoying and unpleasant. Ravian looks over her shoulder with a chillingly detached expression as the tension between them lingers. Under a bright full moon, Irene is startled when a voice suddenly calls out her name. Turning toward the voice, Irene offers a radiant smile as white lilies bloom around her. The dark-haired Duke, Dahain, approaches Irene, warning her about the chilly night air on the balcony. Standing together, Irene tells Dahain she was admiring the beautiful stars in the night sky. In a tender memory, Irene looks at the moon while reflecting on the arrival of their baby girl. Standing before the massive temple, Esther looks forward with a somber and weary expression. A nun points Esther toward a forest road, promising that someone is waiting for her at the end. Memories of chains and betrayal flash before Esther's eyes as she reflects on her past suffering. Stepping into the sunlight, Esther resolves that her life will be different this time around. Determined to change her fate, Esther realizes she has successfully escaped her captors before being abandoned. A powerful realization strikes as Esther vows to live a life far away from the temple's control. A kind aide greets Esther, who is overwhelmed by the sight of a luxury carriage. The light brown-haired man offers a bright and welcoming smile to the young girl. Esther looks on in shock as the aide asks her to rely on him for her care. The man explains that as the Archduke's daughter, Esther now belongs to the Empire's only archduchy. Esther gazes into the distance, struggling to process the weight of her new family's honor. Reassuring her, the aide promises that she will eventually become accustomed to her new, unfamiliar life. Walking alongside her guide, Esther reflects on the reality of being adopted into such a powerful family. Inside the carriage, Esther thanks Duke Dahain for picking her up as he watches her silently. Sitting with noble poise, Dahain declares that he is a man who always keeps his promises. Memories of Ravian's hypocrisy haunt Esther, reminding her of the pain of being deceived by a false smile. Dahain observes Esther sitting far away, wondering if she feels uncomfortable in his presence. Worried about his intimidating aura, the Duke frets over whether his first impression was too scary. Panicking at the misunderstanding, Chibi Esther frantically waves her hands to show she isn't uncomfortable. Esther looks down sadly, explaining that she feels there is no point in wanting things. Feeling embarrassed by the awkward silence, Dahain scratches his face while trying to find common ground. The Duke wishes Esther would be more demanding like Judy, feeling unsure about how to please her. A sudden inspiration hits Dahain as he considers the importance of giving her a proper name. Remembering Irene, Dahain recalls their shared desire to name their child after a bright star. A vision of Irene's joyous laughter fills the air as she stands surrounded by sparkling flowers. Esther looks up at the Duke with wide, curious eyes, waiting to hear his next words. Dahain promises Esther that she will shine brighter than anyone else as a member of his family. Surrounded by golden light, Dahain explains that her name represents a child who shines like stars. Repeating the beautiful meaning, Esther looks surprised yet hesitant to believe such a fate belongs to her. Looking back on her imprisonment, Esther contrasts her dark past with the bright future the Duke describes. Dahain reaffirms her identity, telling her she is now the beloved only daughter of the Teresia family. Smiling warmly, the Duke reaches out to her, his expression full of genuine affection and care. Clutching her tunic, Esther wonders if it's truly okay for her to claim such a precious name. Tears of overwhelming emotion spill down Esther's face as the kindness of her new family hits home. As the carriage travels, Dahain watches the crying girl with a quiet and thoughtful gaze. Thinking of the desperation in her eyes, Dahain reflects on the girl's obviously difficult past. The Duke looks at the small girl sitting across from him, wondering what kind of life she lived. Noticing Esther's tattered and worn clothes, Dahain realizes just how much the young girl has suffered. Dahain notices Esther's tattered and worn clothes, his expression softening with sympathy for her obvious suffering. A dark and menacing aura surrounds the Duke as he reflects on the temple's cruel treatment of the girl. Looking out from the luxury carriage, the Archduke abruptly orders his aide to head toward a clothing store. Dahain's expression is stern and determined as he decides to provide Esther with the life she deserves. In a lush green park, Esther sits on a bench with a dark-haired companion, discussing the Duke's character. Esther admits she doesn't know the Duke well yet, but senses he is different from her past captors. The dark-haired boy offers a warm smile, relieved to hear that Esther's new situation seems promising and safe. Esther gazes at her friend with wide, shimmering pink eyes, clearly moved by his genuine concern for her. The boy reaffirms his dedication to her, promising that he will always be watching over her with care. Looking toward her companion, Esther feels a rare sense of connection and peace in the bright, sunny garden. The boy radiates a warm, protective energy, filling the scene with a comforting sense of sibling-like affection and loyalty. Waking up with a start, Esther rubs her sleepy eyes and looks around the carriage, feeling slightly disoriented. After Esther apologizes for dozing off, the Duke gently reassures her and mentions a necessary stop they must make. Still rubbing her eyes, the young girl looks out the window, curious about their destination in the city. The carriage arrives at a magnificent boutique, bathed in golden light and surrounded by beautiful, blooming pink flowers. Standing before the grand entrance, Esther is overwhelmed by the luxury and opulence of the high-end clothing store. Esther stares at the shop's exterior, her past poverty contrasting sharply with the sparkling elegance of her new life. A vibrant red-haired woman, Dinah, rushes out to greet the Archduke with an enthusiastic and welcoming demeanor. The Duke explains his sudden visit, declaring his intention to select a new wardrobe for the young girl. Dinah is momentarily stunned as she looks down at the small, ragged girl standing beside the imposing Archduke. Introducing herself, Dinah warmly invites Lady Esther to follow her inside, ready to begin the grand shopping session. Esther sits stiffly on an ornate sofa, her small frame looking lost amid the store's glittering and expensive decor. Catalogs are tossed toward her in a flurry of pink ribbons, leaving Esther feeling bewildered by the fashion choices. Worrying about the cost, Esther asks Dinah if it is truly acceptable for her to sit on such furniture. Dinah offers a gentle, reassuring smile, insisting that everything is fine and she should feel completely at ease. A painful memory of being punished at the temple for simply sitting down flashes through Esther's troubled mind. Looking down with a somber expression, Esther reflects on how her past suffering still haunts her present moments. Dinah watches the girl closely, noting her hesitation and realizing Esther is not yet accustomed to being pampered. Observing Esther clutching the closed catalog, the red-haired woman considers how to help the girl feel more comfortable. Dinah presents a luxurious pink dress, but Esther is shocked by the sheer extravagance of such a high-end garment. Esther quickly declines the fancy offer, thinking that such beautiful things are unnecessary for someone of her status. Dinah continues to showcase stunning designs, leaving the flustered girl overwhelmed by the variety of high-end clothes available. Peeking at a simpler design, Esther points out more rustic styles that feel less intimidating than the extravagant gowns. Dinah praises Esther's lovely features, noting that her small face and delicate charm would suit any fashion style. A hand reaches out as the transformation begins, startling the young girl as the makeover session finally commences. With a playful wink and a secret gesture, Dinah promises to work her professional magic on Esther's appearance. Captivated by the word magic, Esther stares forward with hope, wondering if she can truly look like a lady. The Duke waits impatiently on the sofa, questioning his aide about why the fitting is taking so much time. A sudden reveal startles the Duke and his aide as Esther finally emerges from the dressing room area. Esther appears like a radiant flower, her beauty fully realized in an elegant, multi-layered white and purple gown. Every detail of the dress and the delicate daisy in her hair highlights the girl's newfound grace and light. Standing before the Archduke, Esther looks like a true noble, stunning him into silence with her incredible transformation. Feeling shy but genuinely happy, Esther blushes as she expresses how wonderful it feels to wear beautiful clothes. Esther explains that just trying on the gown makes her feel as if she is floating on cloud nine. The Duke and aide are mesmerized, with Dehaene eager to see her in even more stylish noble outfits. Dinah claps her hands in pure delight, thrilled by how perfectly the young lady embodies the shop's designs. A collage of images shows Esther looking sweet and lovely in various dresses, each highlighting her unique, charming beauty. Dinah is ecstatic, shouting with joy as she admires the gorgeous transformation of the cute and sweet girl. The Archduke turns to Ben with a decisive look, his mind made up after seeing Esther's radiant smile. To his aide's surprise, the Duke orders Ben to purchase every single outfit Esther tried on that day. Various elegant dresses are presented to Dinah, who feels overwhelmed by the endless fashion choices. Resting on a red sofa, Dinah insists that 7 dresses are enough, despite the Archduke's offer for more. A red-haired woman asks about Dinah's old clothes as the Archduke prepares to board the carriage. The Archduke coldly declares that Dinah will never have to wear her old rags again, surprising the girl. Dinah's pink eyes widen in surprise as her heart begins to thump with a newfound sense of security. Arriving at the massive estate, Dinah realizes this grand mansion is where her new life truly begins. While the Archduke walks ahead, Dinah gazes at the palace-like home, wondering about the life awaiting her. A mysterious, dark atmosphere surrounds the mention of the Archduke's sons, Judy and Denise, who live here. Dinah looks startled as she steps inside the opulent foyer, feeling the weight of the grand environment. Rows of maids and attendants bow respectfully as the Archduke leads Dinah through the sunlit grand hall. A mustachioed butler bows politely amidst a vibrant display of red roses, welcoming the group home. The Archduke asks about the twins' whereabouts while Dinah stands small and uncertain on the vast checkerboard floor. Surrounded by a swirling purple aura of anxiety, Dinah feels overwhelmed by the sheer number of estate staff. From the high balcony, silver-haired Judy and Denise look down curiously at their father and the new girl. Looking up with wide, shimmering pink eyes, Dinah finally spots the two boys watching her from above. Judy smiles brightly while the glasses-wearing Denise observes silently as they prepare to meet their new sister. Dinah wonders how to address the boys while they debate her identity since they don't know her name. An energetic Judy and a serious, glasses-wearing Denise represent the contrasting personalities of the Archduke's twin sons. Denise stares down with a sharp, analytical gaze behind his spectacles, wordlessly judging the newcomer from the temple. The Archduke leads Dinah toward the base of the grand staircase to introduce her to his sons. Nervous and blushing, Dinah prepares herself for the first real interaction with the two silver-haired brothers. Close-up of Dinah reveals her apprehension as she stands before the twins, her daisy hairpiece catching the light. Judy excitedly rushes toward her, exclaiming how amazing she looks, causing Dinah to jump back in shock. Thinking his father created her, Judy asks how a sister was made in such a short time. Denise pinches Judy's cheek, sharply correcting him that this is an adoption, not some magical creation. The Archduke rubs his eyes in frustration, already exhausted by the chaotic energy of his two young sons. Judy leans in close to examine Dinah, who stares back with a mixture of confusion and mild alarm. Dinah introduces herself as Esther from the temple, prompting a skeptical and curious reaction from the energetic Judy. The Archduke releases an oppressive, dark aura, threatening to call a tutor if Judy continues being rude. Terrified by his father's glare, Judy tries to run away, claiming he has a date with friends. A firm command from the Archduke stops Judy in his tracks just as he attempts to flee. Despite Judy's loud protests, the Archduke orders him to show Esther around the mansion immediately. Judy looks for Denise to take over the tour, only to find his brother has already vanished. The Archduke silences any further complaints with a bone-chilling, white-eyed glare that leaves Judy shivering in fear. Reluctantly, Judy begins the tour, explaining the layout of the various floors as they walk together. They stroll down the long, red-carpeted hallway as Judy points out the locations of the guest rooms. Dinah is mesmerized by the sheer scale of the mansion, marveling at how big everything feels. Judy grumbles about the troublesome task, frustrated that his father forced him into being a tour guide. As he looks at Dinah, Judy privately notes that something about her reminds him of his mother. Noticing her sudden pause, Judy turns back to ask what is wrong with the new girl. Dinah's pink eyes are fixed on a specific doorway, her gaze filled with a quiet, intense curiosity. She looks into a room filled with a brilliant, golden glow that seems to emanate pure beauty. Ornate chandeliers and sparkling light fill the air, creating a magical atmosphere that leaves Dinah completely breathless. Judy asks if she wants this room, and Dinah tentatively questions if she is actually allowed to choose it. Nervously, Judy reveals that this was his secret room for sneaking out, fearing his father might find out. Dinah simply stares at him, her blank expression making the boy feel even more awkward about his confession. Waving his hand dismissively, Judy calls himself an idiot and quickly moves on from his embarrassing slip-up. Thump! Judy points at the room and tells her it's hers now, showing a glimmer of kindness. Dinah looks on with wide eyes, moved by the beauty of the room and Judy's sudden cooperation. Standing side by side, the two children begin to find common ground as they prepare for the next steps. A lavish spread of cakes, tarts, and tea sparkles invitingly on a multi-tiered dessert stand. Esther stares at the overwhelming variety of sweets, amazed by the sheer abundance laid out before her. Watching the Duke approach the table, Esther quietly assumes that he must have a significant sweet tooth. The Duke grows concerned that Esther isn't eating, wondering if she actually dislikes the treats he provided. Clutching the adoption papers, Esther realizes that a simple signature has fundamentally changed the course of her life. A gentle hand extends toward Esther, offering her a cookie to encourage her to finally take a bite. Startled by the Duke's sudden proximity, Esther wonders when he moved right next to her on the sofa. With a blush warming her cheeks, Esther shyly nibbles on the cookie, finding comfort in the simple treat. The Duke watches her with a soft, affectionate smile, clearly pleased to see her finally relaxing and eating. Bathed in golden light, the Duke makes a solemn vow to ensure Esther experiences happiness every single day. Dehine's expression is one of pure, fatherly tenderness as he looks upon his newly adopted daughter. In the quiet of the night, the Duke informs his aide that Esther has finally drifted off to sleep. Beneath the vaulted ceiling, a sudden thud echoes as the Duke gathers his sons for a serious family discussion. The blue-haired twins, Dennis and Judy, listen intently as their father addresses them across the large dining table. A decorative title page showcases Esther in beautiful gowns, surrounded by flowers and toy soldiers of her new family. The morning sun glistens off the towering spires of the magnificent Dehine estate, signaling the start of a new day. Waking up in a grand, sun-drenched bedroom, Esther is momentarily dazed by the brilliant light filling the room. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, the young girl tries to adjust to the unfamiliar opulence of her new surroundings. Esther reflects on how different this bright morning feels compared to the suffocating darkness of her former prison. Feeling out of place in such luxury, Esther sits on the floor, still unaccustomed to the softness of her bed. A cheerful blonde maid named Dorothy enters, greeting Esther with a bright smile and a bundle of yellow flowers. Dorothy playfully teases Esther, encouraging the young lady to speak more casually and comfortably with her. With an affectionate wink, the maid offers her assistance to help Esther get dressed and ready for the day. Esther offers a sweet, genuine thank you to Dorothy, beginning to feel the warmth of her new household. Standing before the dining hall, a heavy thud of realization hits Esther as she notices the complex table settings. A team of diligent maids works quickly to prepare the long table for a formal morning meal. Seeing an empty spot on the table, Esther's old insecurities surface as she fears there is no place for her. Noticing her hesitation at the door, a voice calls out, urging the lingering girl to come inside and join them. The studious young Master Dennis appears, looking towards Esther with a calm and composed expression behind his glasses. Dennis explains that her place is simply being prepared, leading her into the room with a firm, welcoming step. Hearing that her other brother Judy is oversleeping, Esther simply nods, trying to process all the new names. A soft blush colors Esther's face as she tries to maintain her composure in the presence of her new brother. The two children sit across from each other, the vast dining hall accentuating the quiet tension of their first meeting. Dennis confirms her identity, and Esther shyly validates her name, the formal atmosphere making her feel quite stiff. The butler, Delbert, startles Esther as he steps forward to pour her water at Dennis's request. Master Dennis provides a lecture on the health benefits of morning hydration, explaining his own routine of drinking water first. A small, subtle smile plays on the boy's lips as he watches Esther, seemingly content with her presence. In a flash of memory, the Duke's authoritative voice echoes, officially introducing Esther as the family's new younger sister. The Duke sternly warns his sons against bullying Esther, specifically singling out the mischievous Judy as a potential troublemaker. Dahine reminds the boys that Esther is a precious member of their family, not just a guest or a whim. Sitting with his sons, the Duke commands them to protect Esther with the same loyalty they would any family member. Judy looks at his father in surprise, noting the uncharacteristic warmth and kindness in the Duke's recent behavior. Back in the present, Dennis remains focused on his sister, his calm demeanor hiding his true thoughts about the change. Esther is amazed that even the water tastes delicious, a stark contrast to the foul conditions she endured at the temple. A handsome man in a decorated lime green uniform stands tall, radiating an aura of high-ranking noble authority. The Duke enters the room, greeted by Dennis's formal address and Esther's hesitant acknowledgement of her new father. Dahine feels a pang of disappointment at the formal title Lord, though he reminds himself to be patient. The Duke leans in close to Esther, his presence imposing, yet his gaze filled with a quiet, hopeful curiosity. Offering a warm and encouraging smile, the Duke expresses his sincere hope that Esther enjoys the prepared meal. Panic seizes Esther as she worries that her lack of proper dining etiquette will cause her new family to hate her. Esther is startled as a sharp, rhythmic tapping sounds from across the table during their quiet morning meal. Dennis eats with mechanical grace, the soft clinking of his silverware serving as a silent, expert lesson in etiquette. Realization dawns on Esther as she watches her brother, understanding that he is subtly teaching her proper dining manners. She reflects on his kindness, acknowledging that he is guiding her because he knows she is unfamiliar with noble traditions. A gentle clink echoes as the serious boy continues his meal, his focus never wavering from his perfect posture and form. Esther successfully mimics his technique, her progress earning a silent moment of approval from her observant and helpful new brother. The Duke watches the pair from the head of the table, a serene and satisfied smile touching his lips. Later that morning, Dorothy gently brushes Esther's hair, her hands moving with care as they prepare for a day outdoors. The scene reveals a grand, sun-filled dressing room where Esther is being pampered by her cheerful and attentive personal maid. With a bright smile, Dorothy promises to convey Esther's requests to the household staff before calling her a true lady. Esther looks up with a tender, genuine blush, feeling the warmth of Dorothy's kindness and their growing friendship. Dorothy giggles at the girl's shy nature, the atmosphere light and playful as they finish their morning preparations together. Sunlight sparkles off the garden's magnificent fountains, illuminating the towering architecture and lush, blooming greenery of the estate. Wearing a lovely pink gown, Esther wanders through the lush rose garden, her red eyes wide with wonder and joy. Dorothy displays a lavish picnic basket, explaining that the estate's royal gardeners have prepared a special, territorial lunchbox for them. The two settle onto a garden bench, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere while waiting for the young master's scheduled arrival. Esther sits with perfect posture, her anticipation growing as she gazes out at the beautiful and tranquil garden landscape. A rhythmic thump-thump of her heart signals her nervousness and excitement about meeting her second new brother. A heavy, dark rumble seems to emanate from Dorothy as her frustration grows over the young master's long delay. Dorothy fumes silently, wondering if the young master has completely forgotten his promise to meet the new lady today. Turning her gaze toward the horizon, Dorothy's expression becomes thoughtful and slightly weary from the lengthy, unproductive wait. Esther maintains her gentle and patient demeanor, her face illuminated by the soft light of the descending sun. She insists on waiting longer, expressing her sincere desire to properly meet her brother during their first official encounter. Dorothy is moved by the girl's deep thoughts and consideration, her eyes shining with sudden, tearful admiration. A chubby boy in a bow tie, Sebastian, appears suddenly behind the bench, his arrival accompanied by a grunt of disbelief. Dorothy and Esther look up in surprise, startled by the presence of the rude intruder who stares them down. Sebastian reacts with visible shock, his face flushing red as he questions if this girl is truly Judy's sister. Esther stares back with a hollow, blank expression, unsettled by the boy's sudden and aggressive tone. Stylized illustrations showcase Esther in grand gowns, surrounded by floral motifs and dolls representing her new family and toys. The light of the golden hour catches Esther's pink eyes, highlighting her delicate features and somber, thoughtful expression. Sebastian scowls, his gaze cold and judgmental as he looks down at the girl he considers an intruder. A sharp yank accompanies Sebastian's sudden movement as he roughly grabs Esther's arm, causing her to flinch in pain. Loosening his collar, Sebastian looms over the bench, his face twisting with arrogance and wounded pride. Dorothy interjects as Sebastian continues his verbal assault, a sharp smack sounding as he mocks the girl's thin frame. Esther looks away, her heart sinking as she reflects on Sebastian's cruel and dismissive words about her identity. Sebastian mocks her origins, his thoughts filled with venom as he compares the young lady to mere temple property. Dorothy stands tall against the boy, threatening to report his unacceptable behavior to the Grand Duke immediately. Sebastian's arrogance falters as the weight of the maid's threat sinks in, his eyes darting away in nervous realization. He scoffs dismissively, trying to maintain his dignity despite being rightfully reprimanded by the loyal and protective maid. Pointing a finger, Sebastian yells a final, cruel insult before turning his back on the pair in a huff. The boy continues his loud tirade, his face red with anger as he refuses to let the slight slide. With a final grumble of relief, Sebastian storms away, his silhouette receding into the golden evening light. Dorothy watches him leave with an annoyed expression, while Esther remains silent, her head bowed in deep thought. Esther huddles on the bench, her small frame looking vulnerable as she reflects on her insecurities among the aristocracy. The sudden, cheerful woof echoes through the garden as the sun dips below the distant mountain peaks. A friendly golden retriever with bright eyes and a happy expression pops up, surprising the young girl. Esther stares at the animal in wide-eyed wonder, momentarily forgetting her sadness as the friendly dog approaches her. Dorothy explains that the dog is named Happy and belongs to Esther's second brother, Judy. Happy pants joyfully, his tongue lolling out as he wags his tail with unbridled excitement at meeting the girl. Esther embraces the large, soft dog, finding much-needed comfort and warmth in his friendly and wagging presence. Happy the dog pants happily, while narration explains that waiting for Judy isn't the only reason for staying. A blonde maid and Esther enjoy the sunny garden with Happy, surrounded by a sea of white daisies. Judy arrives home, frustrated about missing a talking bird at an auction, and asks his butler for the time. Delbert confirms it is past 5:30, making Judy realize he has left Esther waiting far too long. Judy leans back with a thoughtful expression, clearly feeling guilty about keeping the young girl waiting in the garden. A miniature version of Judy appears amidst cat icons, symbolizing his frantic internal debate on how to apologize. A firm, hurried footstep on the garden path signals Judy's desperate rush to find Esther before nightfall completely. Judy runs down the forest path and stops abruptly, shocked to find Esther and the maid still outside. Esther looks up with her striking pink eyes, appearing calm and patient despite the many hours that have passed. Judy stares at her in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the realization that she truly stayed there just for him. Raising his voice, Judy angrily asks why she is still there, calling her stupid for waiting so long. He scolds her further, insisting she should have gone inside instead of waiting for him until it was nearly nighttime. Judy's anger softens when Esther explains she stayed because she liked the place, making him feel even more guilty. Esther looks at him gently, reassuring the boy that she enjoyed her time in the garden, and it's okay. Judy is frozen by her kindness as Esther suddenly stands up, her body appearing frail and unsteady. Wah! Suddenly, Esther's legs give out and she collapses forward, falling directly into Judy's startled arms. Judy catches her in shock, his eyes wide as the girl leans helplessly against him, her strength finally failing. Looking down at the unconscious Esther, Judy's heart sinks as he realizes she has pushed herself far too hard. Judy carefully lifts Esther onto his back, determined to carry her the rest of the way to the mansion. As he walks, Esther weakly asks if she is heavy, but Judy assures her she feels light as air. Judy asks why she keeps calling him master, expressing his desire for a more personal and familiar connection. He tells her to call him Oppa instead, firmly establishing their new bond as a family. Esther softly whispers Judy Oppa, causing the boy to blush and stop walking in a moment of pure shock. Close-up of Judy's face reveals his intense embarrassment and hidden joy at finally being recognized as her brother. Resting on his back, Esther looks peaceful and safe, finally able to relax now that she is with him. Judy walks toward the estate, silently promising that he will never make her wait or break his word again. A playful chibi panel shows Judy teasing Esther about her earlier claim that she wasn't waiting for him. Judy's expression turns stern as he warns her never to let anyone make her wait in the future. Esther feels a warm sense of security, realizing that for the first time, someone is truly on her side. Judy looks ahead with a determined gaze, his resolve to protect his new sister strengthening with every step. The blonde maid notes that Esther has fallen into a deep sleep, exhausted by the day's long events. Judy feels a surge of pride and affection, finally understanding the true weight of being an older brother. As night falls over the mansion, Judy refuses help and continues to carry his sleeping sister himself. Judy enters the mansion through the grand glass doors, his figure illuminated by the soft, warm light inside. The staff watches in quiet respect as Judy protectively carries the sleeping Esther through the grand hallway. From the shadows, the glasses-wearing Denise watches silently, acknowledging Esther as his sister for the first time. Esther drifts through a magical dreamscape filled with glowing petals and feathers, her heart feeling light and airy. In her dream, she senses a mysterious presence nearby, wondering who could be watching over her so closely. A dark-haired boy appears in her vision, looking down at her with a somber and mournful expression. Esther wakes up in her bedroom and is startled to find the dark-haired boy sitting right beside her. Her pink eyes widen in confusion as she struggles to separate the lingering dream from her current reality. The mysterious boy kneels by her bedside, holding her hands tightly in a gesture of desperate, silent prayer. Esther notes the incredible warmth of his hands, feeling a strange and comforting sense of security from him. She gazes at him with intense curiosity, her mind racing to place his face and understand his identity. The boy looks at her with a gentle, sad expression, his face framed by his messy, dark hair. Suddenly, Esther is fully awake, finding herself surrounded by her family and the estate's concerned staff members. Close-up of her eyes shows her shock as she hears the voices of the Archduke and Judy nearby. Judy excitedly asks if she is okay, while the tall Archduke stands behind him with a relieved expression. The room is filled with people as they explain she has been unconscious with a fever for 2 days. Esther clutches her sheets, her mind spinning with the possibility that her fever was actually a saint's awakening. Judy and the Archduke stand by the bed as the silver-haired boy reacts with surprise to Esther's awakening. Esther looks down guiltily and apologizes, but the Archduke watches her with a calm and silent intensity. Reaching out with a gentle touch, the Archduke pats her head while Judy watches from the edge of the bed. Blushing slightly, Esther insists she is healthy, her pink eyes shimmering with a mixture of shyness and determination. Judy suggests that a medical examination is necessary, worried that the long journey from the temple caused her illness. A quiet moment follows as Esther tilts her head, processing the boy's concern with a thoughtful and curious expression. Judy presents a pink rabbit plushie, claiming it looks like her, leaving Esther baffled by his unique perspective. Clutching the soft toy, Esther realizes she has felt this strange, feverish symptom once before in her past life. Surrounded by white lilies, Esther senses that her awakening period as a saint is drawing much closer than expected. A flicker of worry crosses her face as she ponders if there is a deeper connection to her regression. Blue-tinted memories of the dark-haired boy surface, his somber eyes haunting her thoughts as she drifts toward sleep. Safe within her new room, Esther falls into a deep, peaceful slumber while holding her pink rabbit close. A soft knock sounds at the door as Dorothy, the blonde maid, asks for permission to enter the room. Esther sits up in her ornate bed, granting entry as the morning light begins to fill the grand chamber. Dorothy enters, followed by an analytical-looking doctor and additional staff, ready to begin a thorough medical checkup. Startled by the sudden influx of people, Esther huddles under the blankets, clutching her plushie for comfort. The staff's overwhelming energy and determination to care for her leave the young girl feeling dizzy and confused. Feeling pale and exhausted, Esther weakly protests that she is fine, hoping they will stop the intrusive examinations. The Archduke enters, noticing her lack of energy, while Esther inwardly groans about the length of the doctor's visit. The doctor insists on continuing the exam to be safe, while Esther fears she might actually catch a new disease. A close-up reveals the doctor's sharp, clinical gaze as he continues to observe the young girl's physical state. Esther flinches under the man's scrutinizing stare, feeling a sudden wave of unease wash over her. Her heart races as she recognizes a familiar, chilling look in his eyes that triggers a traumatic memory. The doctor concludes that she is physically fine, but suffers from low energy levels and significant dehydration. Shaking with fear, Esther watches him leave, haunted by the memory of the familiar, cold eyes she just witnessed. Images of the temple priest's disdainful gazes flash through her mind, reminding her of the cruelty she once endured. The Archduke stops to check on her, and Esther quickly apologizes for causing a scene over something minor. Sitting on the edge of the bed, the Archduke firmly tells her there is no reason to apologize for illness. He offers a rare, gentle smile, reassuring her that she has nothing to worry about in this house. The heavy atmosphere of disdain begins to fade away, replaced by the quiet beauty of the mansion's stained glass. Finding comfort in his presence, Esther remains still as the Archduke continues to pat her head protectively. Through the window, the Archduke watches the heavy rain fall, silently hoping the children are safe and well. In his study, his aide notes the Duke's soft expression, marveling at how much he cares for the children. A sudden downpour drapes the estate in shadows as the narrator reflects on the unusual intensity of emotions. The Archduke's expression turns pensive as he recalls how anxious and fragile Esther appeared back at the temple. A sharp knock interrupts his thoughts, and his aide looks toward the door with a curious and expectant gaze. Dorothy bursts into the office, her face pale with terror as she struggles to deliver urgent news about Esther. The air grows cold as the maid reveals that Esther's condition has taken a sudden and terrifying turn. Bang! The Archduke kicks the door open, shouting Esther's name in a voice filled with desperation and fear. He finds her huddled on the floor, trembling violently as she is consumed by a waking nightmare. Esther is trapped in a dark vision, her eyes wide with horror as she mistakes the Duke for someone else. Falling to her knees, she begs for death, leaving the Archduke horrified by the depth of her suffering. He watches in stunned silence as the young girl confesses her crippling fear of simply being alive. Tears stream down her face as she pleads to be taken away from the pain of her memories. Crack! Lightning strikes outside the mansion, mirroring the chaotic and violent storm raging within Esther's mind. Her nightmare shifts to a prison-like room where a cruel boy stares through the bars with a dark smirk. The silver-haired boy commands her to help him relax, while Esther looks on, bound and utterly terrified. She sobs and begs for mercy from a boy named Ravian, repeatedly apologizing for unknown perceived wrongs. Gasp! Suddenly snaps back to reality, staring up at the Archduke with tear-filled, wide pink eyes. The Archduke holds her close, whispering reassurances and asking if she finally recognizes where she is. The gray-haired Duke looks at Esther, assuring her that they are no longer at the shrine where she suffered. Esther shivers under her blanket, apologetically explaining her trauma, while the Duke identifies their location as his mansion. Mentioning a girl named Ravian, Esther awakens from her nightmare to find the Duke offering a gentle, caring word. Haunted by memories of the shrine, a silent, internal plea for death reveals the depth of the girl's pain. She stares at the Duke's reaching hand, her pink eyes wide with confusion at his sudden, tender concern. He gathers her in a protective embrace, promising to stay until the thunder stops, despite her worry about him. Settling her comfortably, the Duke insists he can work right here to ensure she feels safe and cared for. Panic seizes Esther as the Duke asks if someone at the shrine mistreated her, causing her to flinch visibly. She admits her long-standing fear of storms, while the Duke listens intently to every word of her shy explanation. Brushing her hair, the Duke promises that no one will ever be allowed to hurt her in this household. He looks on with a steady, resolute gaze, his protective instincts fully awakened by his new daughter's obvious trauma. Feeling the warmth of a family for the first time, Esther's eyes well up as she begins to sleep. A sudden click sounds as Judy enters, rubbing his eyes and admitting he was too worried about her. Judy declares he will protect her and hops onto the bed to sleep beside his new sister tonight. The Duke watches with a small smile as Judy cheers, allowing the children to stay together for the night. Looking up with wide eyes, Judy asks if their father will truly stay until they both fall fast asleep. He promises not to leave, watching over his children as the heavy atmosphere of the storm begins to fade. Esther drifts off into a peaceful slumber, hoping the Duke is still there when she awakens in the morning. The Duke sits in quiet reflection, his sharp eyes fixed on the sleeping pair as he plots his next move. Seeing them asleep, the Duke quietly orders the butler, Pen, to investigate the shrine and a girl named Ravian. Ten is horrified by the abuse allegations, while the Duke vows to handle whoever dared to hurt Esther. Beside the innocent, sleeping children, the Duke's eyes glow with a cold, terrifying fury directed at those who hurt them. Sunlight warms the room as Esther finally wakes up, her hair tousled and her expression dazed from deep sleep. A soft thud accompanies her realization that the Duke and Judy stayed by her side through the night. Disappointment clouds her face as she wakes to find the Duke gone, wondering if her fear was too much trouble. Clutching her blanket, she worries that her weaknesses will eventually make her new family grow tired of her presence. The mansion is a hive of activity, from maids working in the kitchen to guards organizing the courtyard's weapons. Esther wanders through the grand, sun-filled hallways, searching for any sign of her father or her brother Judy. Amidst the lush roses, she reflects on her luck, yet fear of her own trauma ruining everything remains constant. She enters a quiet room and finds Dennis, whose focused and calm presence catches her by surprise. Master Dennis greets her with a simple hello, his eyes never leaving the book he is currently reading. He explains that knowledge is power, leading Esther to curiously ask if she can join him for a walk. Claiming to be bored, Dennis agrees to the walk, though his formal demeanor keeps her at a careful distance. They stroll together, though Esther quickly realizes that Dennis is leading her down an unfamiliar and secluded garden path. He stops and apologizes, revealing that the walk was a lie intended to get them away from the maids. The atmosphere grows cold as Dennis turns to her, his gaze sharp and unsettling as he prepares to speak. He bluntly states that he doesn't consider her his sister, despite how easily Judy and the Duke accepted her. Esther is left reeling as Dennis vows to uncover everything about her past before walking away into the garden. Heavy rain pours down over the Duke's mansion at night, reflecting the dark and brewing tension between the siblings. Alone in the library, Dennis searches through records, driven by his need to understand the mystery surrounding his sister. A wide yawn sounds as Dennis spots Judy sneaking out of his room late at night, clutching a pillow. He follows his brother through the dim halls, questioning Judy's suspicious behavior at such a late hour. A soft click echoes as Dennis watches Judy enter Esther's room, admitting he was too worried to stay away. Watching from the shadows, Dennis sees his family's protective instincts for Esther, making him question his own detached feelings. He wonders what makes her so special, his analytical mind struggling to understand the bond his family already shares. Despite thinking her intelligent, Dennis remains skeptical, determined to learn the true nature of his new sister, Esther. Sunlight hits a small, jagged hole at the base of the mansion's stone walls, hidden behind green bushes. Dennis points out the dog hole, explaining its location to the confused and slightly apprehensive girl standing beside him. Fearing he plans to cast her out, Esther stands frozen as her heart races with a new, growing anxiety. With a surprising announcement, Dennis reveals they will use the hidden hole to sneak out of the mansion together. Dennis explains that they can sneak out through the dog hole, leaving Esther looking apprehensive about the plan. Amidst the lush green leaves, Dennis offers Esther the choice to stay behind if she is uncomfortable. Esther cautiously crawls through the jagged opening in the stone wall, finding it much smaller than she imagined. Emerging on the other side, she finds Dennis already waiting with his arms folded and a patient expression. Esther confirms her successful passage, though her posture remains stiff and uncertain as she stands before her brother. Dennis stares at her with a neutral, analytical gaze behind his glasses, silence stretching between the two siblings. Confused by his intense and silent observation, Esther tilts her head slightly, her pink eyes wide with wonder. The children stand in a stylized, star-filled space, their quiet interaction highlighting the growing curiosity between them. They arrive at a bustling village square filled with festive banners, market stalls, and a lively crowd of townspeople. Esther is momentarily breathless, her eyes shining as she takes in the wonderful and vibrant scene before her. Dennis notices her awe but remains focused on the task, commenting on how crowded the village center has become. Dennis reflects on why the Duke chose this child, his internal thoughts questioning her mysterious origins and character. He suggests they move on, and Esther agrees, ready to follow him deeper into the busy village streets. A quick wave accompanies Esther's sudden claim that she can manage on her own, surprising her older brother. Dennis points toward the bustling market, seemingly indifferent as he prepares to go his separate way for work. They part ways, with Esther watching him leave while maintaining her polite, quiet demeanor amidst the passing crowd. Esther stands alone, her profile showing a mix of deep contemplation and a firm resolve to wait patiently. Dennis walks away into the golden light, leaving Esther behind in the busy and unfamiliar market square. Dennis's silhouette fades into the distance, his back turned as he disappears among the villagers and market stalls. Now completely alone, Esther stands in the middle of the street, looking small against the grand village architecture. Bathed in the warm glow of sunset, Esther observes the village life, her expression becoming somber and thoughtful. Realizing Dennis intended to abandon her, Esther reflects on his sudden request to go out together. She stands in the darkening street, reflecting on her status as an unwanted family member who might be hated. A close-up of Esther's face shows a flicker of realization amidst the shimmering golden light of the evening. A memory of the Duke's stern face resurfaces, highlighting the contrast between her new life and inner pain. Young Judy appears in her thoughts, rubbing his eyes and reminding her of the family's brief, protective warmth. A dreamlike image shows the Duke and Judy protecting Esther in bed, a stark contrast to her current isolation. A heavy thud sounds as someone approaches from behind, causing Esther's eyes to widen in sudden, sharp alarm. Two rough-looking men notice her standing alone, wondering aloud why a noble child is without a bodyguard. The men realize she's an easy target for money, while Esther senses their predatory intentions with a cold gaze. The men loom over her, but Esther shocks them by bluntly asking if they intend to kill her. She stands her ground, explaining that kidnapping would be useless, as she claims to be an unwanted child. With a hollow expression, Esther invites them to end her life, even offering to find a knife herself. Dennis suddenly reappears behind the men, calling out Esther's name and startling the two would-be kidnappers. He approaches, questioning the situation, while the men realize their lucky day has just turned very sour. The two men exchange nervous glances, realizing the noble children are far more fearless and strange than expected. A stylized panel reveals the village's realization that these children bear the striking features of the Duke's family. Dennis moves protectively in front of Esther, his gaze sharp and defiant against the intimidated and whispering villagers. Dennis issues a cold warning, his green eyes flashing with a hidden, dangerous power behind his round spectacles. Terrified by the boy's sudden intensity, the men scramble away, shouting that they were only kidding. Villagers gossip as the children walk away, noting their arrogance and the undeniable prestige of the Tercia family. Esther looks at her brother with new eyes, surprised by his sudden return and his protective actions. Dennis shouts in frustration, demanding to know what she was thinking by making such a reckless, suicidal offer. Esther flinches slightly, her pink eyes wide with shock at Dennis's unexpected and genuine emotional outburst. They stand in the quiet village street, the tension between them heavy as they process the recent encounter. Dennis admits he intentionally left her to test her feelings, his head turned away in a mix of guilt. He explains his curiosity about her true nature, his gaze drifting toward her small silhouette in the distance. Dennis peeks around a corner, admitting he hoped to see the real her during her moment of isolation. Esther stands in the fading light, her eyes closed as she absorbs the complicated truth of her brother's actions. Looking up at him, Esther softly admits she truly thought he hated her, a new understanding blooming. Esther looks on with a dazed and curious expression as she tries to process her brother's unexpected return. Standing alone in the village street, Dennis reflects on Esther's strange behavior and the true nature of her character. Dennis recalls Esther's chilling request for death, struggling to understand how she could speak so hollowly of her life. Turning toward her, Dennis softly admits that he didn't actually intend to leave her behind in the market square. Esther looks away, her profile reflecting a quiet sadness as she processes her brother's complex and testing behavior. Harsh memories of the temple resurface as Esther is told to appreciate a life she was once told was sinful. Dennis brings a hand to his chin, deep in thought, as he continues to analyze his new sister's unsettling outlook. A sudden, firm movement accompanies Dennis grabbing Esther's arm, startling her out of her deep and somber contemplation. Dennis speaks with a sharp and serious intensity, determined to break through the walls Esther has built around herself. Esther listens in stunned silence as Dennis sternly warns her never to speak about death so easily ever again. A gentle, warm feeling washes over Esther as she offers a small, genuine smile while blushing at his concern. The two children walk away together, holding hands in a rare moment of sibling connection amidst the quiet village street. Birds chirp over the grand mansion towers as the scene shifts to a bright, clear day at the Tercia estate. The Duke sits at the head of the long dining table, focused on his meal during a formal family dinner. During dinner, Dennis offers a sincere apology for his lack of care, prompting a surprised reaction from his gathered family. The Duke offers a rare, warm smile, telling his son that he deeply appreciates his honesty regarding the day's events. Leaning back, the Duke announces he wants to hear the children's opinions on a new and important matter. Surrounded by festive decorations, the three children look up with wide eyes and curious expressions at their father's request. Judy excitedly suggests a masquerade party, while Dennis yawns, counter-offering a much more boring and academic book discussion instead. Dennis continues to elaborate on his desire for a large space for knowledge, while Judy remains skeptical of the plan. Esther sits frozen at the table, her mind reeling at the sudden and unexpected mention of a grand birthday party. The Duke watches Esther with a calm and steady gaze, gauging her reaction to the news of the upcoming celebration. The twins tilt their heads in unison, confused by the idea of making this specific birthday celebration something special. The Duke confirms his plans, stating that the upcoming birthday party will serve a much larger purpose for the family. A sharp gasp of surprise escapes Esther as the weight of her father's plan begins to truly sink in. The Duke reveals he will create a formal seat to officially introduce Esther to society during the twins' birthday celebration. Panic flares in Esther's eyes as she realizes her plan to disappear quietly is being ruined by this public announcement. The Duke explains that tutors will be arriving to teach Esther proper etiquette over the next 3 months of preparation. A soft rustle sounds as the Duke adjusts his ornate cravat, his presence exuding a calm and absolute authority. Shimmering light surrounds Esther as she sits in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the grand future being laid out before her. In the Grand Library, Penn the butler informs the Duke that he has successfully secured the most talented tutors available. Penn presents the records of the genius tutors, noting their prestigious backgrounds and the exclusivity of their current teaching assignments. The Duke listens intently, his expression serious as he reviews the high standards required for Esther's new academic education. Penn reflects on how the Duke never hesitates to spend exorbitant amounts of money on anything related to Esther's welfare. Looking up from his paperwork, the Duke's sharp eyes reflect his unwavering commitment to his daughter's successful integration. The butler reports that the official investigation into the temple found no public records of abuse or student detention. A heavy silence fills the room as the Duke processes the lack of evidence despite Esther's clear and visible trauma. They discuss the girl named Ravian, noting the suspicious discrepancy between official reports and the fearful reactions of the students. A vision of the beautiful, blonde-haired Ravian appears, her red eyes holding a mysterious and perhaps predatory glint. Memories of a small girl entering the temple surface, highlighting the religious path she was forced to walk as a saintess. The Duke contemplates the difficulty of uncovering secret abuse within the temple walls, his expression growing increasingly somber. Penn stands by the window, confirming that despite their best efforts, no physical evidence of abuse was officially documented. The Duke is haunted by the memory of a broken Esther kneeling and begging for the release of death. Staring out at the night sky, the Duke wonders what hidden horrors truly occurred during Esther's time at the temple. Now safe in the mansion, Esther holds a pink crayon, her hair styled in charming, braided buns as she works. A soft scratch sounds as Esther begins to draw, her thoughts drifting back to the cold and restrictive shrine. She recalls a nun's fury as her childhood drawings were torn apart, a cruel reminder of her former life's lack of freedom. A steady, rhythmic scratching sounds as Esther focuses on her paper, finally free to express herself without fear of punishment. Lying comfortably on the floor, Esther smiles warmly as she loses herself in the simple joy of creating something new. A nearby maid watches the scene with a gentle smile, heartened by the sight of the young girl finally finding peace. Esther sits quietly as Dorothy approaches, her surprise evident as the maid's voice reaches her. Dorothy is overwhelmed with shock and delight, discovering that Esther has drawn a stunningly accurate portrait of her. Esther shyly presents the sketches as a gift, thanking Dorothy for her constant support and kindness. Proclaiming it a work of art, Dorothy insists the Grand Duke must see Esther's incredible hidden talent immediately. Esther frantically downplays her skill, haunted by memories of being mocked for her poor drawing at the shrine. Recalling the cruel laughter of other children, Esther is brought back to the present by Dorothy's adamant praise. Dorothy continues to gush over the professional quality of the portrait, while a modest Esther feels completely overrated. Dennis walks through the hall, drawn by Dorothy's loud excitement as the two girls greet him warmly. Pausing for a moment, Dennis looks thoughtful and slightly curious about the commotion he just encountered. Dennis sits on the floor, questioning why Esther calls Judy brother, but has yet to use the title for him. Esther is taken aback by the request, her eyes wide as she considers how to respond to Dennis. A soft blush colors Esther's cheeks as she processes the boy's surprisingly earnest desire for a closer bond. Dennis maintains a serious expression despite the slight pink on his face, waiting for her reaction with bated breath. Shifting the topic, Dennis offers to find books Esther likes, wanting to spend more time getting to know her. Esther reveals she was just drawing, and Dennis leans in to see the work she's been focused on. Observing her sketches, Dennis concludes that she truly enjoys drawing, though Esther remains humble about her hobby. Dennis suddenly asks for a portrait of himself, causing Esther to panic and insist her skills aren't good enough. Dorothy loudly defends Esther's talent, urging her to have confidence while the boy watches with intense curiosity. A quiet moment of connection passes between the two children as they prepare to start the impromptu art session. Esther looks away, still feeling a trace of self-doubt about capturing the young master's likeness correctly. Settling in, Dennis poses patiently while Esther begins to sketch, her concentration deepening as she works. Focused and determined, Esther's serious expression fascinates Dennis as he watches her bring the drawing to life. A sudden spark of admiration glints in Dennis's eyes as he realizes the sheer detail Esther is capturing. Startled by his gaze, Esther asks why he's looking at her, but Dennis simply encourages her to keep drawing. Esther worries about potentially disappointing Dennis, her anxiety lingering even as she continues her work. Dennis calls out to Esther, breaking her concentration just as she finishes the portrait of him. Looking at the final product, Dennis is ecstatic, loudly praising Esther's talent with shining, starry eyes. Esther is genuinely stunned by his reaction, finding it hard to believe that such a simple skill is impressive. Baffled by her raw talent, Dennis asks if she was taught at the shrine, but Esther confirms she is self-taught. Dennis rewards her with a gentle head pat, leaving a blushing Esther feeling warm and appreciated for her effort. A rare, kind smile graces Dennis's face as he looks at the sister he is growing to cherish. Clutching the portrait, Dennis runs off to find the Duke, eager to show off Esther's incredible work to others. For the first time, Esther realizes she is truly good at something, her heart swelling with newfound self-confidence. Esther's eyes glow with a bright pink light as she reflects on the joy of being recognized and praised. The scene shifts to the grand mansion exterior as a carriage arrives and servants announce the Duke's return. The Duke of Tercia walks through the halls, frustrated by the empire's politics and the lax state of training. Clenching his jaw, the Duke expresses his deep distrust of those around him following his recent frustrations. Butler Ben surprises the Duke with the news that Esther is currently busy with a new drawing hobby. Initially skeptical, the Duke listens as Ben explains that his daughter is actually quite gifted with a pencil. The Duke strokes his chin thoughtfully, intrigued by the idea of his daughter possessing such a creative talent. Surrounded by sunlight and greenery, Esther sits alone in a garden gazebo, focused on her latest drawing. A small, peaceful smile plays on Esther's lips as she enjoys the tranquility of her favorite hobby. Walking through the garden, the Duke spots Esther in the distance and pauses to observe her. The Duke watches his daughter silently, his stern expression softening as he sees her so deeply engrossed. Esther remains unaware of her father's presence, lost in the world she is creating on the paper before her. Looking out over the lush landscape, Esther takes a brief moment to rest her eyes between sketches. Ben notes how focused Esther is, while privately thinking that the Duke is completely losing his usual stern composure. Tapping her pencil, Esther contemplates her next subject, while her father and the butler watch from the shade. Esther senses someone watching and is startled to find her father sitting right there, calmly observing her work. The Duke explains that he came directly to the garden to find Esther immediately after returning to the mansion. The gray-haired Duke smiles warmly at Esther, asking if she truly drew a portrait of her brother Dennis. Esther blushes and looks down at her sketchbook, shyly admitting she did, but claiming it isn't beautiful. A gentle, floral aura surrounds the Duke as he gazes at Esther with an unexpectedly soft and kind expression. Noticing her hesitation, the Duke tells her she needn't force herself if the task is too difficult. He explains that his office feels empty, expressing a playful desire to hang one of her portraits there. The Duke feigns a heavy sigh, making Esther jump in surprise when he suggests finding a different artist. Memories surface of the Duke previously calling portraits annoying, leaving his servants stunned by his blatant, charming lie. Esther stammers in shock, her pink eyes swirling as she struggles to process her father's sudden, dramatic request. Resting his chin on his hand, the Duke watches her reaction with a faint, amused, and calculated smirk. Esther eventually gives in, softly agreeing to draw the portrait if he is truly okay with her work. Sitting together in the sun-drenched garden, the Duke thanks Esther while a gentle patting sounds on her head. A warm-hearting blush creeps onto Esther's face as she closes her eyes, soaking in her father's genuine praise. Ken the butler walks down a stone path, a steady, rhythmic step sounding as he heads toward the gazebo. Delbert calls out to Pen near the ornate garden structure, his hand raised in a quick, friendly greeting. Delbert informs Pen that the Duke is currently busy spending time with Esther, a sharp step sounding nearby. The two remain seated in the peaceful garden, the Duke watching over Esther while she focuses on her art. With a focused expression, Esther works diligently on her sketch, while the Duke observes her with quiet pride. Pen whispers to Delbert, expressing utter shock that the Duke would lie about finding portraits annoying and tedious. A sudden, sharp glare from the Duke's piercing green eyes silences the servants before they can gossip further. Looming like a dark shadow, the Duke issues a cold, silent warning for them to keep their mouths shut. Terrified, the servants immediately change their tone, loudly praising Esther's incredible talent to please their intimidating master. Pen reflects on how strange it is to see the man once feared as a demon acting so differently. The Duke smiles with a soft, genuine affection that contrasts sharply with his reputation as a cold, ruthless ruler. The Duke calls out to Esther, prompting her to look up from her drawing with wide, curious eyes. He leans in close, asking if she would like to receive professional lessons to further develop her drawing skills. Surrounded by visions of music, art, and flowers, Esther listens as he offers her the freedom to learn anything. A small, sincere thank you escapes Esther's lips as she processes the Duke's overwhelming kindness and support. High above the garden gazebo, a sudden, surprised exclamation rings out into the clear, bright blue morning sky. Esther presents her finished work with a worried look, fearing her father might be disappointed by the result. A quick rustle sounds as the Duke takes the paper, his eyes widening in genuine shock at the quality. Looking intently at the sketch, the Duke calls Pen over, while the servants approach with visible, nervous curiosity. He reveals the drawing to the servants, who react with stunned silence at the impressive detail Esther achieved. The Duke proudly displays a masterful sketch of himself, asking the servants if it isn't remarkably good work. Stunned, Penn and Delbert exclaim that Esther is a hidden genius, their eyes wide with disbelief at her talent. The Duke watches Esther thoughtfully, wondering if her time at the shrine influenced her unique and refined style. He declares his daughter a genius, seeking confirmation from the servants, who nod in total, wide-eyed agreement. The Duke decides he will bring this impressive portrait to show off at the upcoming Tercia dinner party. He asks Delbert about the prestigious frame won at the Leuven auction, intending to use it for Esther's art. Delbert informs the Duke that the frame was already claimed by young Master Dennis, causing a brief pause. Holding the paper gently, the Duke looks at the drawing with immense satisfaction and thanks Esther once more. He continues to admire the sketch, his expression softening as he compares it to his own self-image. Esther watches him with a dazed expression, her heart warming at the Duke's evident and sincere appreciation. In a cute, stylized moment, Esther realizes that the Duke is very different from the scary man she feared. Looking back with a peaceful smile, Esther feels a sense of belonging amidst the blooming roses and sunlight. The scene shifts to the grand mansion at night, illuminated by the soft, glowing light of a full moon. Tranquility settles over the estate as water flows softly from the courtyard fountain under the dark, starry sky. Inside the bustling party, guests discuss military victories while the Duke sits regally in his formal red uniform. The room hums with conversation as guests heap hollow praises upon the Duke for his leadership and training. With a dark, chilling smirk, the Duke challenges the crowd, leaving them sweating in a tense, heavy silence. A quick, sharp swipe sounds as the Duke raises his hand, commandingly taking control of the entire room. The gray-haired Duke calls for everyone to gather around as whispers fill the grand hall. With a confident smile, the Duke prepares to unveil a mysterious object hidden under a white sheet. The crowd's anticipation builds as the Duke asks if everyone is ready to see the surprise. A smooth shh sounds as the cloth is pulled back, revealing a stunning, hand-drawn portrait. Onlookers are stunned to find a beautiful sketch of the Grand Duke himself, marveling at the artistry. Guests debate which famous artist could have produced such an exquisite and unique sketch style. Benjamin, the blonde prince, observes the masterpiece, while others sense an unusual aura within the lines. The prince gazes intently at the image, appearing deeply struck by the power of the artist's work. Observers confirm the portrait radiates a clear and potent divine power, shocking the assembled nobility. A steady thump sounds as the Duke approaches, confirming the sketch is indeed something special. Amidst the gossip, the Duke confirms he has adopted a daughter, surprising those who heard the rumors. A menacing aura surrounds the Duke as he commands everyone to attend his upcoming celebration. Under the bright night moon, the Duke stands alone on his balcony, deep in contemplation. A light tap sounds as Prince Benjamin arrives, greeting the Duke after a long time apart. Benjamin apologizes for his lateness, explaining a carriage malfunction delayed his arrival at the estate. The two share a warm moment, reminiscing about the battlefield and the strength they gave each other. Benjamin grows concerned, noticing the Duke seems troubled despite the success of the evening. Lowering his tone, the prince asks the Duke for a favor, emphasizing their deep bond of trust. The sketch of the Duke remains bathed in a soft, ethereal light amidst blooming flowers. Benjamin asks if the princess created the drawing, sensing a connection between her and the divine work. He reflects on the impossibility of such power coming from someone not destined to be a saintess. High above, the silent guardians of the temple stand in their ceremonial robes, overseeing sacred duties. A vision of a praying saintess appears, symbolizing the immense holy burden carried by the chosen. The prince knows that imbuing art with such concentrated divine power is a feat beyond ordinary talent. Esther stands with her back turned, her identity as the Duke's adopted daughter finally being revealed. As the Princess of Tercia, Esther represents a new era for the Duke's legendary and powerful household. Benjamin remains baffled that someone outside the temple's influence could possess such a massive source of power. He wonders if Esther would be willing to draw a portrait of the sickly boy, Noah. A startled gasp escapes the Duke as he realizes the weight of the prince's unexpected request. Benjamin smiles warmly, checking if the Duke is still providing care for the fragile Noah. The prince vows to stay by Noah's side, even if the rest of the world turns away. Benjamin asks why the Duke seems hesitant, his expression softening as he seeks a path forward. He remembers Noah's long suffering and hopes a portrait will bring the boy a moment of peace. The Duke agrees to ask his daughter, though he remains wary of placing a burden on her. He emphasizes that he cannot force Esther, and Benjamin expresses his deep gratitude for the Duke's help. A worried sweat drop appears as the Duke reflects on the complexity of Esther's growing abilities. The night remains quiet over the grand estate, hiding the secrets of the powers within its walls. Inside, Esther watches in shock as a plant she touched grows unnaturally fast before the maid. The maid is delighted by the fantastic growth, while Esther stammers an apology, fearing her secret. Esther stares at the glowing flowers, realizing her holy power is becoming harder to conceal. She understands that her energy acts as a catalyst, forcing life to bloom with incredible speed. Panic rises as she fears her discovery will lead to being locked away in the temple forever. Memories of the cold temple and the demanding priests remind her of why she wanted to flee. The massive temple looms against the blue sky, a place of both holy light and suffocating duty. A rhythmic clack sounds as the blonde Ravian walks through the crowd, hailed as the next saintess. Ravian wears a gentle, calculated smile, basking in the praise and the fine clothes given to her. Meeting a priest at the door, Ravian is thanked for her dedication to her morning rituals. She presents herself with grace, carrying a golden pitcher, destined for a very important recipient. Ravian explains she has brought the necessary medicine to aid the ailing Saintess Cespia. Touched by her devotion, the priest praises her beautiful heart and unwavering faithfulness to the church. A girl with long white hair smiles gently as she is told the goddess will watch over her. Ravian. Glug! A hand pours pink liquid from a small vial into a cup, preparing medicine for the ailing saintess. The black-haired priest smiles, while Ravian, the white-haired girl, gazes back at him with a calm, attentive expression. Creak. The massive wooden doors open just enough for the young girl to peek into the quiet, sacred hall. Inside the grand chamber, the elderly Saintess Cespia lies weakly in her bed, illuminated by soft window light. Hearing a familiar voice, the young Ravian wonders if the man has come to visit her in the chapel. Wah! The white-haired girl offers a radiant smile as she confirms her presence to the bedridden saintess. Ravian enters the room with medicine, urging the frail, elderly Cespia to sit up and take her treatment. Cespia speaks of her approaching end, sensing that her body will soon fulfill its destiny as the goddess calls. Raven is visibly upset, shouting in protest at the saintess's somber words about her life finally coming to a close. Clinging to the bedside, the crying girl begs the saintess not to leave and to ask for more time. The elderly saintess offers a weak, kind smile and softly thanks Ravian for everything she has done. Sniffle. Tears stream down Ravian's face as she weeps, unable to bear the thought of losing her mentor. Standing before the medicine, Ravian looks on with a dark, haunted expression as she prepares for a difficult task. The priest informs Ravian, who now has brown hair, that the special medicine is intended to help the saintess. Ravian is stunned to learn that Duke Brian, her father, was the one who specially provided the medicine. Swish! Carefully pours the shimmering pink liquid into a golden chalice, following her father's secret arrangement. She reflects that the saintess will soon be more comfortable than she is now, reaching for a final piece. Close-up of Ravian's red eyes reveals her grim conviction that the saintess will soon be next to the goddess. Tap. Ravian places the cup down, her expression hidden as she prepares to serve the final, fatal draft. With a deceptive smile, Ravian encourages the saintess to drink the entire serving of the provided medicine. A dark glint appears in her eyes as Ravian notes that this resolution is necessary, even for her. Back in the present, Dorothy, the blonde maid, looks completely flabbergasted by the young girl's unusual request. Esther asks if she can stay as much as possible, leaving the maid blushing and stammering in agreement. Pitter-patter thanks Dorothy and quickly runs through the grand, sunlit hallway of the estate toward her room. Esther ponders the timing of her awakening, realizing she must prepare for the changes coming in 6 months. Glancing at a potted plant, Esther's attention is captured by the vibrant, blooming hyacinths sitting in her chamber. A golden frame explains that a saintess's divine power has a profound impact on all sentient beings. Esther observes the flowers, knowing hyacinths are the fastest way to measure the progress of her awakening power. A memory surfaces of Esther being harshly scolded at the temple for her inability to bloom flowers in the past. Thump! Heart sinks as she looks at the blooming hyacinths, realizing her powers are manifesting much too early. Out in the garden, the gardener is absolutely shocked to see the entire flower field suddenly bursting into bloom. The staff gathers in confusion, marveling at the impossible sight of so many hyacinths blossoming all at once. Hiding behind a tree, Esther sweats as she overhears the gardener's frantic questions about the sudden floral explosion. Thud! Esther slumps against the bark in a panic, terrified that her rapid awakening will ruin her plans. She realizes she will fully awaken as a saintess within months, forcing her to hasten her time to leave. Seeing the Archduke and his aide nearby, Esther resolves to escape before the temple can find her. Shh! The Archduke's aide gestures for silence while Esther huddles behind the tree, her face clouded with worry. Peeking out with wide pink eyes, Esther watches the men with a mixture of fear and growing attachment. Esther scolds herself for letting her heart weaken, reminding herself that she wasn't brought here to play games. Pat! A sudden hand on her forehead makes Esther freeze as the Archduke asks what is on her mind. The tall Archduke kneels beside her, warning the small girl to be careful in a soft, protective voice. He tells her she'll get hurt if she's not careful, his gaze filled with a warmth she never expected. Step. The Archduke walks away toward the mansion, casually asking his staff if anything unusual has occurred. Esther remains dazed, her face flushed as she touches the spot on her forehead where his hand rested. In a cute chibi panel, the Archduke frets over potential scars, while Esther insists the bump doesn't hurt. Esther watches him go, her wide eyes shimmering with confusion and a newfound sense of security. The Archduke looks pensive as he realizes just how much he has come to care for the girl's safety. Snap! That she got hurt. the Archduke wonders if he should simply cut down the tree she hit. Gardeners marvel at the impossible sight of the hyacinths blooming with sudden, radiant energy. Startled by the Archduke's sudden presence, Esther stammers nervously while trying to hide her growing panic. With a warm, reassuring smile, the Archduke suggests they move to a more private location to talk. Still slightly dazed, Esther nods in agreement, following the man away from the prying eyes of the staff. A gentle chirping of birds fills the air as the scene shifts to a quiet, sun-drenched gazebo. Sitting across from each other at a grand marble table, an expectant silence settles between the pair. Resting his chin on his hand, the Archduke gazes at Esther with a look of calm, curious intrigue. Esther's internal panic spikes as the Archduke mentions that hyacinths are known to respond to divine power. Flushed and trembling, the young girl desperately searches for a way to explain the sudden floral explosion. Sensing her hesitation, the Archduke leans in slightly, waiting for her to find her words. The two remain seated in the peaceful garden, though the tension in Esther's posture remains high. Esther's eyes widen in surprise as the Archduke suddenly asks her for a significant favor. He pauses for a moment, his expression turning slightly sheepish as he struggles to voice his request. A vision of a secluded cabin appears as the narrator explains the political dangers surrounding Noah's sanctuary. Rubbing his face in frustration, the Archduke grumbles about how difficult it is to refuse his aide, Benjamin. Relenting with a sigh, the man officially agrees to proceed with the plan, despite his lingering reservations. Esther tilts her head in confusion, wondering if he truly needs a portrait drawn by her. Looking adorable in her blue and white dress, Esther gazes up at him with a mixture of hope and curiosity. A sudden, gentle hand reaches out to pat the young girl's head, surprising her with the warmth. The Archduke smiles softly while patting her, a gesture that provides Esther with a rare sense of safety. Surrounded by white daisies, Esther feels a quiet comfort she never thought she would find in this world. Breaking the silence, Esther addresses the Grand Duke with a new, determined light in her pink eyes. She looks back toward the grand mansion, her expression pensive as she prepares for the task ahead. Her heart flutters with a mix of anxiety and excitement as she asks if the arrangement is still okay. A heavy carriage rumbles through a lush, green forest, its wheels crunching loudly over the uneven dirt path. With a soft thud, Esther steps down from the carriage onto the forest floor, feeling the cool breeze. Dressed in a wide sun hat and carrying a small suitcase, Esther stands ready to begin her journey. A voice from the carriage informs her that a cabin lies just a short walk down the road. Crunch! Her small shoes step through the foliage as Esther walks alone into the depths of the woods. She stops in her tracks, blinking in surprise as she spots a structure hidden among the trees. Clack! The door swings open, and Esther steps into a room filled with drifting dust and golden light. She realizes with a start that this must be the sanctuary the Archduke was referring to. Shimmering particles of light dance across the stone floor as she cautiously explores the quiet interior. The room is filled with jars and supplies, appearing lived in, yet eerily silent in the late afternoon glow. Esther reflects on the sanctuary's remote location, realizing it is far from the reach of common society. A somber thought crosses her mind regarding the temple's suffocating control over all holy places in the empire. Step! She moves further into the building, her suitcase held tightly as she searches for signs of life. A sudden chill in the air makes her shiver, drawing her attention toward a specific closed door. A soft sigh of wind echoes through the hall as Esther stares at the dark wooden entrance before her. Creak. She slowly pushes the door open, her heart racing as she peeks into the mysterious gold room. Sunlight streams through the window, illuminating a bed and a figure resting quietly within the shadows. Esther freezes, her eyes fixed on the person lying still on the bed in the center of the room. Beneath the white covers lies a young boy with messy brown hair, his eyes closed in deep sleep. Approaching the bedside, Esther looks down at the sleeping boy with a look of intense, growing curiosity. A close-up of her wide pink eye reveals her shock as she begins to notice something familiar. The boy remains motionless, his face peaceful, as he is surrounded by a faint floral essence. Standing over him, Esther's expression softens, though a flicker of recognition begins to dawn on her face. The scene highlights the contrast between the vibrant, living girl and the pale, slumbering boy in her presence. A flash of intuition strikes her as Esther thinks to herself that she has seen him somewhere before. Recognition finally takes hold as she realizes the identity of the boy lying in this secret forest sanctuary. The young boy with messy brown hair remains fast asleep, his face looking peaceful in the sunlit room. Esther realizes she only has 2 hours left and resolves to stop overthinking and focus on her task. Clack! The girl prepares her art supplies, setting up a blank canvas to begin the requested portrait. Sitting beside the bed, Esther quietly observes the sleeping boy, trying to find a starting point for her drawing. She casts a nervous glance toward her canvas, feeling a flutter of uncertainty about capturing his handsome features. Staring intently, the pink-eyed girl remains silent as she studies the boy's still face in the quiet sanctuary. A close-up reveals the boy's serene expression as he slumbers, his long lashes casting shadows on his cheeks. Esther compares the boy's beauty to Ravian, thinking he is one of the prettiest people she has ever seen. She recalls the striking, handsome faces of the Grand Duke and his brothers while reflecting on the boy's appearance. Feeling flustered, Esther notes that the sleeping boy is obviously quite handsome, causing her a bit of embarrassment. Tilting her head, the girl looks puzzled as she searches for the right way to begin her portrait. Scratch! Starts sketching the boy's outline on her canvas, which is adorned with a border of white flowers. Scratch! She continues to sketch, realizing that drawing his face is difficult since his eyes are currently closed. Frustrated by the challenge, Esther decides she must hurry up and draw, despite her internal distractions and worries. Swish! As the girl continues to paint, she feels her energy draining, leaving her exhausted after the long day. Noticing a small detail, Esther wonders why she didn't see it before, worrying that the boy might be cold. Esther hums in thought, her pink eyes narrowing as she focuses deeply on the still figure before her. Squeeze! The girl gently takes the boy's hand, a soft light glowing as she shares a moment of empathy. Thoughts of her loneliness in the temple basement surface as Esther feels a deep connection to the sleeping boy. As she holds his hand, a floral essence surrounds the slumbering boy, who remains peaceful and motionless. Closing her eyes, Esther clasps her hands together and prays, a warm golden light emanating from her body. The golden light of her divine power washes over the boy's face, causing his eyelids to flutter slightly. At! Quickly pulls her hands back as the boy begins to stir, her heart racing with sudden surprise. Blink, blink! The girl watches with wide pink eyes as the brown-haired boy slowly wakes from his deep sleep. Grab! In a sudden blur, the boy reaches out and catches Esther's hand, causing her to cry out in shock. Panicked, Esther stammers about his sudden awakening, while her face flushes a bright red from the unexpected contact. Looking completely flustered, the young girl apologizes profusely for the intrusion, and the boy looks up with heavy-lidded brown eyes, his expression soft and calm as he gazes at Esther. Flustered, Esther wonders how to apologize as the boy sits up and demands to know how she got there. In a frantic rush, Esther explains her presence and apologizes, promising she meant no disrespect with her portrait. The boy repeats the word portrait with a look of genuine surprise, clearly caught off guard by her explanation. Esther gazes at him with a mix of worry and curiosity, waiting to see how he will react to her. Dazed, the boy listens as Esther explains she was trying to be quiet and only needed his eyes open. Flushed with embarrassment, the girl introduces herself as Esther, while her gaze darts away from the boy's intense look. The boy's lips part as he whispers her name, a spark of recognition appearing in his brown eyes. A warm, gentle smile spreads across the boy's face as he looks at Esther with newfound affection and kindness. Confused by his reaction, Esther asks if he's dreaming, while the boy realizes that she truly is real. Clasp. The boy holds Esther's hand tightly, a beautiful floral frame highlighting the significance of their sudden connection. A look of pure shock crosses the girl's face as she reacts to the boy's surprisingly forward behavior. Blush! The boy holds Esther's hand even tighter, leaving the girl completely baffled and flustered by his warmth. Esther says she will leave after drawing his eyes, prompting the boy to ask her why she must go. Looking down on the scene, an expectant silence fills the room as the two children remain hand in hand. Esther turns to the boy, who asks for confirmation that the portrait will be done once his eyes are drawn. With a sudden, mischievous smile, the boy leans in close to the girl, leaving Esther completely speechless and shocked. Flushed and dizzy, Esther stares wide-eyed as the boy encourages her to finish her portrait right then and there. Closing his eyes with a serene smile, the boy enjoys the soft atmosphere while flowers bloom all around them. In a cute chibi panel, Esther realizes she's being teased and resolves to finish her task properly next time. Esther awkwardly admits the true reason for her visit, but the boy reassuringly offers to handle the explanation. Esther watches him with a hesitant expression, noting that the boy still hasn't let go of her hand. Peeking at him, the girl thinks to herself that the boy seems quite strange despite his handsome appearance. The boy suddenly claims to feel unwell, catching a surprised Esther completely off guard. He explains that he suffers from a mysterious disease that conventional medicine cannot cure. Esther listens in stunned silence, her pink eyes wide as she processes his heavy confession. The boy reveals his lifelong isolation, having lived alone without any friends since birth. Sitting together, Esther finds his lonely upbringing incredibly sad and shares a moment of quiet empathy. He expresses his genuine joy at meeting her, asking if she liked the scenery outside the sanctuary. Sunlight bathes the remote forest cabin, a peaceful setting for their secret meeting. Esther looks pensive, her heart reaching out to the boy who has known so much solitude. With a gentle smile, the boy reminds her that she came there to paint his portrait. A dark memory surfaces of a desperate girl in the temple basement begging for help. The girl in the flashback kneels before a locked door, pleading for freedom from her captors. Contrast hits as Esther remembers her own past suffering while staring blankly into the present room. The brown-haired boy leans closer, his expression warm and inviting as he studies her face. He asks what she is thinking, snapping a blushing Esther out of her somber thoughts. The boy asks if she will visit him again, his hopeful gaze causing her to blush deeper. Esther wonders if she can make such a choice alone, her pink eyes sparkling with uncertainty. She promises to ask for permission to visit again, much to the boy's visible delight. Creak! The heavy door swings open, letting in the golden light of the late afternoon. Sun hat in place, Esther adjusts her suitcase and prepares to leave the quiet forest sanctuary. The boy stands at the threshold, waving a friendly goodbye as she walks down the path. A close-up of the boy reveals a serene, lingering smile as he watches his visitor depart. Esther's profile is illuminated by the soft light, her expression calm as she concludes her task. She walks through the vibrant green forest, the sun casting long shadows through the trees. A striking close-up of the boy's brown eyes captures the deep impression Esther has left behind. Night falls over the grand temple as a full moon shines brightly above the domed architecture. Clack, clack. Ravian, the white-haired girl with red eyes, walks through the halls with a priest. Ravian peeks through a heavy door, greeting the resident saintess with a polite and practiced smile. Her intense red eyes narrow slightly as she observes the room, feeling a shift in the air. An elderly woman with long white hair stands before large windows, bathed in celestial light. Saintess Cespia's eyes glow with divine power as a sudden, shocking vision takes hold of her. Ravian freezes in shock upon seeing Cespia awake and standing after her long, poisoned slumber. A grim thought recalls that Cespia was nearly a soulless corpse before this miraculous recovery. Cespia declares that a new presence has manifested, her face illuminated by an inner light. Ravian's red eyes widen in disbelief as she hears the prophecy regarding the next saintess. The elderly saintess speaks of a coming calamity, her gaze fixed on something beyond the room. Cespia questions Ravian about the goddess's voice and the identity of the true successor. The saintess looks dazed, as if her mind is still caught between the physical and divine realms. Ravian dismisses Cespia's ramblings as madness, refusing to believe anyone could replace her. A vision of blooming flowers accompanies the prophecy of a noble child born in the shadows. The true successor is described with gray-brown hair, her image appearing in a hazy, regal light. Ravian's face tightens with suspicion and dread as the details of the vision are revealed. Cespia remains in her trance, her white hair shimmering under the intense moonlight. Snapping back to reality, Cespia asks what she said, while Ravian presses her for more information. Ravian questions if the next saintess truly has gray-brown hair and rosy eyes, hiding her anxiety. Cespia tries to brush it off as sleep-talking, but Ravian senses a dangerous truth in her words. The elderly woman prepares to return to her rest, mentioning the rare cycle of saintess births. Standing alone, Ravian broods over the possibility of a rival born to a high-ranking family. Her red eyes burn with a cold intensity as she vows to remain the only saintess. The question of the successor's identity lingers in the air, creating a sense of impending conflict. Ravian recalls being told she was born for this role, strengthening her resolve to protect her status. A man places his hands on young Ravian's shoulders, questioning if she ever considers a different life path. Looking out the window, the man reminds the white-haired girl that her destiny is to become a saintess. With a bright, determined smile, young Ravian vows to fulfill her duty and become the next saintess. Under the glow of a full moon, the quiet temple stands tall, its architectural details bathed in cool light. Now grown, Ravian stands before a massive wooden door, her presence small against the temple's imposing interior. Gazing at the door, the white-haired girl reflects on the passage of time and her own growth. A radiant goddess figure watches over a kneeling devotee in a golden vision, representing an ancient oath. Asserting her claim, Ravian walks through the hall, confident that no one else can take her place. Startled by a familiar voice, the red-eyed girl turns sharply as flowers bloom in a sudden bright panel. Cain greets Lady Ravian warmly, acknowledging their time apart as he stands before the great wooden doors. The teal-haired man shares news of her mother's worry regarding Ravian's isolation and struggles within the temple. Cain delivers a stern message from the Duke, who expects results during his upcoming business trip nearby. Ravian's eyes widen in surprise as she processes her father's demanding words and his impending visit. Clack, clack. Her heels echo as she walks, troubled by the news that Noah has not woken up. Cain explains that the deteriorating relationship between the crown and the temple has negatively impacted the situation. Ravian realizes the priests abandoned their duties toward Noah, whose image appears behind her like a distant memory. Dire warnings reveal that Noah's survival depends entirely on regular infusions of powerful spirit energy from high priests. Ravian dismisses Cain, instructing him to return in 3 days for a formal reply to her mother's letter. Ignoring the risks, the girl declares her intention to visit Noah secretly, leaving Cain visibly shocked and protesting. Ravian challenges the man's hesitation, her expression hardening as she prepares to defy the temple's strict rules. Standing tall, the white-haired girl asserts her right to visit Noah, reminding Cain that the boy is her fiancé. Flustered, Cain eventually yields, agreeing to keep her clandestine visit a secret from her formidable father. Looking toward the future, Ravian whispers a silent plea for Noah to wait for her arrival. A final thought bubble confirms her determination to see him soon, as the scene begins to shift. Tweet, tweet! Birds chirp around the secluded forest cabin where the mysterious boy has been resting in silence. Sitting up in bed, Noah marvels at his newfound strength, feeling better than ever after the recent power infusion. Visions of Esther's expressive face and bright pink eyes fill his mind, leaving a lasting impression on him. Noah smiles warmly, clasping his hands together as he thinks of the girl who brought him back to life. Boom! The door flies open as a blond man in ornate clothing gasps in shock at Noah's awakening. Benjamin waves enthusiastically, his face glowing with joy as he greets the boy he thought might never wake. Overcome with emotion, Benjamin falls to his knees, sobbing as he recounts his fears during Noah's long sleep. Noah chuckles at Benjamin's dramatic reaction, teasing him about crying so much while he was merely resting. Benjamin asks if Noah was the one who invited Esther, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Noah confirms his desire to stay near Esther, suggesting that her presence makes the temple's help unnecessary. Benjamin looks on in relief while Noah remains focused on the girl who truly changed his condition. Startled, Benjamin reacts to Noah's surprisingly forward attitude regarding his future plans and his connection to Esther. Noah realizes the vivid images in his dreams were real, contemplating his next move with a quiet look. He asks Benjamin to bring Esther back, but the blonde man warns that the Duke might not permit it. In a cute chibi panel, Noah worries about Esther's personality, while Benjamin mentions an urgent message from Ravian. Noah's expression turns serious and cold at the mention of the white-haired girl and her persistent bond. Decisive action is taken as Noah orders a telegram sent to the Grand Duke of Tercia to retrieve Esther. Looking through rose-covered thorns, Noah resolves to end his hollow relationship with Ravian once and for all. He envisions cutting ties with his fiancée to finally be free to seek out the girl he truly desires. A determined vow appears against a dark background, echoing Noah's resolution to find his way back to Esther. The scene shifts to the grand architecture of a prestigious academy, its blue roof towers reaching toward the sky. Tap, tap. Two men walk down a lavishly carpeted hall discussing young Master Judy's arrival at fencing camp. A handsome man with a sharp gaze smiles confidently, certain that Judy will excel regardless of the environment. The conversation turns toward a new teacher as the two men continue their walk through the gilded hallway. The brown-haired companion notes that the Duke becomes remarkably animated whenever the topic of Esther is brought up. The Duke listens intently, his expression unreadable, as they finalize the arrangements for the girls' education and safety. The gray-haired Duke watches Esther from the doorway, wondering what thoughts are currently occupying his daughter's mind. Sitting alone in the bright room, a dazed moment takes hold of Esther as she lost in pensive silence. Looking down from a high vantage point, Esther reflects on how a certain boy has remained on her mind. Resting her face in her hands, Esther blushes deeply while wondering if she could truly ever become his friend. A sudden, heavy thud sounds as the Duke calls her name, jolting Esther out of her deep, romantic daydream. The Duke approaches with his butler, asking to sit beside Esther to share some promising news about her education. Esther tilts her head in curiosity, her large pink eyes wide with surprise at her father's sudden, gentle request. Settling onto the sofa, the Duke introduces the idea of a young but highly capable teacher for the children. Deeply moved, Esther reflects on how no one has ever gone to such lengths to care for her before. A soft floral aura surrounds the Duke as he smiles warmly, expressing his sincere hope for her future success. A dramatic ta-da sounds as the gray-haired Dennis appears, looking stern and serious as he prepared for the meeting. Esther watches her brother with a curious gaze, while the Duke notes the children's visible excitement for the day. The sofa creaks under the Duke's nervous tension, prompting the butler to worry about the furniture's structural integrity. From across the grand room, Dennis shocks everyone by requesting to join Esther's specialized lessons, despite his usual preferences. Glancing sideways, Dennis admits that studying with his sister is a far more appealing prospect than working alone. Confusion flickers in Esther's eyes as she tries to process her brother's sudden change in academic attitude. In a cute, simplified moment, the two siblings sit together, looking like little squirrels lost in their own thoughts. The Duke sits regally as the butler reflects on his master's surprising and newfound appreciation for family teamwork. A sudden, sharp clatter sounds as a maid enters the room to announce the arrival of the teacher's carriage. A rhythmic clop-clop sounds as a carriage rolls into the sun-drenched courtyard of the massive, sprawling estate. With a bright ta-da! A handsome, blonde-haired man makes a grand entrance, radiating an aura of confidence and charm. The newcomer introduces himself as Dwayne Tercia, while the Duke formally welcomes him into the grand hallway. The Duke presents his children to the teacher, formally entrusting their education to Dwayne's prestigious and capable hands. Shyly, Esther introduces herself alongside Dennis, who mentions his twin brother Judy is currently away at the academy. A charming smile spreads across Dwayne's face as he takes in the sight of his new, bright-eyed students. Esther is immediately impressed, sensing that her new teacher is a truly incredible and kind-hearted person. Dwayne outlines his plan for a trial lesson, followed by a formal discussion regarding the terms of his contract. With a firm, decisive nod, the Duke agrees to begin the academic session immediately in the mansion's library. Dwayne kindly offers to lead the children toward the classroom, beginning their first day of official education together. A steady, rhythmic step sounds as the group walks through the mansion, the Duke following closely behind the children. They pass through a grand corridor, a steady step sounding as they walk beneath a massive, ornate family portrait. The procession continues into the library, a steady step sounding as they pass rows of countless ancient leather-bound books. Dwayne is taken aback by the Duke's insistence on personally supervising the lesson to judge the teaching quality. The Duke stands firm with crossed arms, arguing that as a father, he must witness the lecture firsthand. Seeing the Duke's protective stance, Dwayne realizes just how deeply the man truly cares for his children's well-being. Dennis asks to join the lecture as well, receiving an enthusiastic and welcoming response from the blonde teacher. The lesson begins in the sun-drenched library, with Dwayne presenting the curriculum to his attentive and curious young audience. Watching from the shadows, the Duke smiles proudly as he observes his children engaging with their new educational path. Dennis leans in to help his sister, explaining a difficult point while Esther listens with focused and grateful attention. Dipping her quill, Esther finds herself completely immersed in a history lesson that feels more interesting than ever before. A soft scratch sounds as Esther writes, marveling at the simple, profound joy of discovering new knowledge. Dwayne passionately discusses the empire's origins and the 4 great families that built its prestigious and long-standing foundation. A sudden realization strikes Dwayne, causing him to pause briefly as he looks toward his eager young students. In a playful meta moment, the twins stare out at the reader, looking like identical copies of academic focus. Dwayne announces the end of the first lesson, leaving Esther looking visibly disappointed that the learning has stopped. Esther stares up with wide, sparkling eyes, clearly hungry for more of the fascinating information Dwayne provided. Seeing the children's eagerness, the Duke and his butler share a pleased and satisfied look at the successful start. From outside the library window, the teacher's voice carries through the leaves as he continues the afternoon's lecture. At the entrance, the butler greets a returning guest, welcoming young Master Judy back home to the estate. The gray-haired Judy grins broadly, excited to be back after only a month away from his beloved family. Conversation shifts to the Academy's fencing camp as voices discuss a student's impressive growth and spirit. The butler walks through the grounds with young Master Judy, confirming that the rest of the family is well. While the butler notes Judy's physical maturity, the gray-haired boy resolves to handle an errand before returning home. A shadow falls over Judy's face as he mentions a debt to pay, his eyes narrowing with cold determination. Judy shouts in disbelief upon hearing of Sebastian's recent actions, frustrated that the news reached him so late. The maid reports Sebastian's mistreatment of Esther, prompting Judy to demand every detail of the boy's behavior. Simmering with rage, Judy stares into the distance as a chilling aura begins to radiate from his small frame. He vows to punish the one who dared to call his sister inferior, his protective instincts completely taking over. Judy kicks open the door to a common room, demanding to know where that brat Sebastian is hiding. A group of students watches in confusion as a brown-haired boy confronts Judy, mistaking him for a mere follower. Judy's gaze turns sharp and dangerous as he warns the boys to answer his questions while his anger peaks. Deep in the woods, the scene shifts to a large, neglected wooden mansion where the boys have been congregating. Inside the dusty hall, Judy stands before a group of cowed children, his presence immediately dominating the room. Sebastian, a chubby boy in a red bow tie, looks on in shock as he realizes Judy has returned early. Wah! Panicked shouts erupt as Judy drags one of the boys across the floor, demanding Sebastian show himself. Whew, a menacing smile plays on Judy's lips as he finally corners his target, enjoying the boy's visible terror. Judy asks if Sebastian was the one who bullied his sister, causing the chubby boy to tremble in fear. In a comical moment, Sebastian and his cohorts look thoroughly defeated, sporting bandages from Judy's swift disciplinary actions. Sitting regally, Judy scolds the group for hiding in an abandoned mansion and causing trouble in his absence. Sebastian flinches as Judy brings up the insults directed at Esther, the weight of his mistakes finally setting in. Humiliated and sweating, Sebastian curses Judy under his breath, unable to believe he is being treated this way. The chubby boy tries to defend his insults, but his voice falters under Judy's intense and unforgiving gaze. Judy argues that Esther's nobility is evident in her features, unlike Sebastian's, and refuses to let her be belittled. A vein of anger throbs on Judy's forehead as his patience with Sebastian's excuses completely evaporates. Sebastian mumbles while holding a heavy punishment pose as Judy demands he repeat his insults to his face. Judy questions if Sebastian feels physical pain, using it as a lesson for the emotional pain he caused Esther. He sternly explains that words can wound just as deeply as blows, forcing the bully to reflect on his cruelty. Looking away, Judy feels a pang of guilt as he recalls a time when he also failed to understand. His eyes soften with a lingering regret, the memory of his past behavior toward his sister still haunting him. A flashback reveals Sebastian's mocking face and Esther's silent suffering, her heart breaking under the weight of his words. The memory shows Sebastian roughly grabbing Esther's arm, highlighting the insults she was forced to endure in silence. Past Judy watches from the shadows, his expression pained as he realizes the extent of his sister's distress. Young Esther blushes and looks away in the memory, her eyes filled with tears from the constant harassment. Sitting by her bedside as she sleeps, young Judy offers a quiet apology to Esther for his own negligence. Snapping back to the present, Judy demands that Sebastian offer Esther a sincere and proper apology for his actions. Sebastian cries out in protest, his pride still preventing him from admitting he was wrong to the girl. A dark, heavy pressure fills the room as Judy's power flares, forcing a terrified Sebastian to finally submit. Stretching his arms, Judy feels a sense of accomplishment now that he has settled the score for his sister. Ah, right. In the mansion library, Esther pauses her studies, suddenly remembering a task she left unfinished. Gazing out the window, she worries about how to approach the Duke for permission to visit her new friend. Esther's pink eyes sparkle with longing as she wonders when she will be able to see the boy again. She recalls their quiet moment together in the forest cabin, where she promised to ask for leave to return. The boy's plea that he is all alone echoes in her mind, pulling at her heartstrings with an intense loneliness. A vision of his gentle, handsome smile fills the frame, leaving Esther completely captivated by the memory of him. Her face flushes a deep pink as she stands frozen, still feeling the lingering charm of their recent encounter. Determined to be a good student, Esther resolves to finish her homework and earn the Duke's praise and permission. The sound of her quill scratching against paper fills the quiet room as she focuses intently on her studies. Wah! A sudden, piercing scream from outside shatters her concentration, causing Esther to jump in her seat. She rushes to the window as a commotion breaks out in the courtyard among the panicked manor staff. Distressing news spreads through the crowd as a servant is revealed to have been bitten by a hidden snake. Esther hides behind a tree, drawn to the garden by a sudden scream and the mention of a snake. Peering from her hiding spot, Esther watches as servants discover a small white snake nestled among the roses. The white snake's eyes glow with an eerie light as a sharp hiss sounds into the quiet garden air. Esther's eyes widen in surprise as she focuses intently on the scene unfolding within the colorful flower bushes. Thinking the snake is remarkably large, Esther watches as the creature slithers past the servants toward the mansion. Clinging to the tree, Esther feels a surge of anxiety while debating whether she should intervene in the danger. A strange realization washes over Esther as she finds herself somehow understanding the inner thoughts of the white snake. Esther realizes the snake is pregnant and only acting aggressively to protect its unborn young from perceived threats. From a distance, Esther observes a group of worried servants tending to a man who has fallen in pain. Despite her desire to live a quiet life, Esther feels a growing obligation to help the injured servant, Hans. A maid runs toward Esther with a panicked warning, urging her to retreat from the area where the snake was spotted. Esther stops the maid to confirm the news, her mind already set on assisting those in need near the bushes. Looking toward the garden, Esther reflects on a past kindness that makes her unable to turn her back now. In a warm memory, servants once presented Esther with a bouquet of pink roses that matched her own bright eyes. Esther holds the beautiful flowers with a look of wonder, deeply touched by the genuine affection of the estate staff. The servants beam with pride and joy, happy to see their young lady appreciating the simple beauty of the garden. Overwhelmed by the memory of their kindness, Esther feels a lump in her throat and a renewed sense of purpose. Returning to the present, Esther decides she cannot ignore Hans' plight after everything the servants have done for her. Ignoring the maid's protests, Esther turns and runs toward the site of the snake attack with surprising determination. Her face set in a serious expression, Esther approaches the garden, ready to confront the creature and save the staff. The servants turn in shock as Esther arrives, their eyes wide as they realize she is walking straight toward danger. Reaching out toward the white snake, Esther asks the creature if it can truly understand the intent of her words. Surrounded by a shimmering aura, Esther reassures the snake that no one in the garden intends to cause it harm. A soft hiss sounds as the snake listens, its aggressive posture softening under the influence of Esther's gentle voice. Kneeling among the roses, Esther prepares to handle the creature with a level of calm that leaves the servants speechless. Esther requests a basket from the staff, intending to safely relocate the pregnant snake away from the busy courtyard. A servant cautiously hands over a woven basket, his hands trembling as he watches his lady's brave and unusual actions. With incredible care, Esther coaxes the white snake into the basket, successfully neutralizing the threat without any further violence. Stunned by the display of courage, the servants whisper in disbelief about how their lady safely handled a venomous predator. Carrying the snake in its new temporary home, Esther turns her attention back to the injured Hans and his group. Hans sits on the ground in a daze, while Esther worries that the snake's venom might cause him serious injury. Esther recalls her past regressions where her unique powers only led to rejection and betrayal by those she tried helping. A bright, warm glow emanates from Esther's hands as she channels her healing magic into Hans' injured, venomous foot. The servants watch in a frozen, wide-eyed silence as the miraculous light of healing magic fills the morning garden air. Hans exclaims in joy as the pain vanishes, realizing his foot is completely healed and the venom is entirely gone. Esther looks down with a pensive expression, her heart heavy with the fear of how others might perceive her power. A tense atmosphere settles over the group as Esther stands quietly, the servants staring at her with a mix of awe. Esther announces she will take the snake away, ignoring the servants' fearful warnings about the creature's hidden and lethal dangers. With a firm step, Esther walks away from the group, leaving the servants to process the incredible miracle they witnessed. Hans shouts his gratitude to the departing Esther, his voice filled with sincere relief and a newfound, deep-seated respect. Overjoyed, Hans kicks his feet in the air, marveling at the boundless energy flowing through his newly restored, healthy body. The servants reflect on Esther's incredible healing talent, realizing her touch possesses the power to instantly relieve the most severe pain. Walking away, Esther feels a quiet sadness as she wonders if her helpfulness will only lead to more fear from others. Watching her go, a servant calls Esther a truly kind girl who stopped to help despite the obvious risks involved. The staff recalls Esther's cheerful grins whenever they served her sweet desserts, feeling happy just to see her eating well. Hans and his companions eagerly plan to bake special donuts as a delicious, proper thank you for their savior lady. Still holding the basket, Esther continues toward the mansion, her mind already moving on to her next set of duties. A sudden dash sounds as Esther runs across the lawn, her light pink dress catching the bright morning sunbeams. Esther looks down with a focused and resolute gaze, her jewelry shimmering as she prepares to face the day's challenges. The grand mansion windows reflect the morning light as Esther rounds the corner of the estate with her basket. Dennis contemplates the mysterious connection between snakes and healing, his mind racing through the potential implications for Esther. In the vast library, Dennis finds a book by High Priest Christopher describing a saintess's ability to communicate with animals. Reading further, Dennis learns that true saintesses possess the rare divine gift of understanding every creature's inner thoughts and intent. A sudden realization strikes Dennis as he stares at the ancient page, finally connecting the historical texts to Esther's actions. The narrative confirms that a saintess's healing power is incomparable and far superior to any other ability known to the Empire. History remembers the legendary saintess as the salvation of the Empire, a figure of immense divine importance and miraculous deeds. The text details how a saintess's eyes glow with a brilliant golden light whenever she manifests her powerful divine abilities. Dennis confirms his suspicions with a determined look, realizing his observations of Esther's unique traits were not a mistake. Recalling Esther's glowing eyes during the healing, Dennis is now certain his sister is the saintess spoken of in history. He wonders if his father adopted Esther, knowing her true identity, as a sudden creak sounds from his desk chair. Dennis reflects on the current saintess, Cespia, noting that history has never recorded two female saints in the same generation. Resting his hand on the book, he realizes the temple would never have allowed the adoption if they knew her nature. Anxiety grips Dennis as he worries the temple might take Esther away if they ever discover her hidden divine power. An image of Esther highlights her innocent beauty, unaware of the heavy, secret destiny her brother has just uncovered. A sharp thud sounds as Dennis closes the book, resolving to keep Esther's secret safe from the world's prying eyes. He determines that he must study harder than ever before to become strong enough to protect his sister's fragile future. Back at the mansion, Esther gazes out with a somber and focused expression while reflecting on the day's surprising events. Esther warns the white snake to remain peaceful, while the nearby maid watches the creature with visible fear and trepidation. Reassuring the servant, Esther promises that the snake is no longer a threat to anyone living within the mansion walls. As the maid heads off to clean, Esther contemplatively wonders how she should explain the new garden pet to her father. A soft hiss sounds as the white snake interacts with the young lady, its movements becoming gentle and entirely non-aggressive. A light slither sounds as the creature comfortably winds itself around Esther's arm, showing a clear bond of trust. The snake seems to express its deep gratitude, coiling peacefully while Esther looks on with a kind and patient smile. Esther asks the creature if everything is all right, receiving a calm and steady gaze from the magical white snake. A gentle rustle sounds as Esther handles the snake, demonstrating her unique and natural ability to soothe wild animals. She reflects that while its power hasn't fully awakened, she feels perfectly fine and safe in the snake's quiet company. Exhausted from channeling her holy magic, Esther lets out a wide yawn as her eyes droop with sudden, heavy sleepiness. A quick dash sounds as the maid rushes back, panicked that she left her lady alone with the dangerous predator. Stopping in her tracks, the maid stares with wide eyes at the unexpected and peaceful scene unfolding before her. Esther lies fast asleep on the rug, curled up peacefully next to the coiled and resting white snake. Surrounded by a dreamlike aura of blooming flowers, Esther rests deeply after the morning's taxing and miraculous healing. Finding the sight incredibly cute, the maid decides it's better to let her lady rest a bit longer before dinner. A steady step sounds as a mysterious figure approaches Prince Noah, who sits alone under the moonlit night sky. A silver-haired girl arrives, explaining that her high position in the temple makes it difficult for her to slip away. The girl is revealed as Ravian, dressed in ornate white robes that signify her prestigious status as a saintess candidate. Ravian looks at Noah with an intense gaze, her striking red eyes reflecting the cold and silver light of the moon. She acknowledges Noah's royal status while questioning the path he is currently taking within the complex politics of the empire. Ravian admits she rushed to find him out of deep concern, having feared he was in some sort of dangerous situation. She asks him if he is truly just a downgrade candidate, a title that carries a heavy and insulting weight. A charming but cold smile spreads across Ravian's face as she addresses her fiancé, the dark-haired Prince Noah. Noah remains silent, his expression hidden in the blue shadows of the night as he listens to her bold claims. Noah acknowledges that Ravian is the officially chosen successor saintess and his intended fiancé within the Austin Empire. Ravian confirms her divine lineage from House Breon, a family the goddess promised would always produce a future saintess. She is pleased that Noah remembers her so clearly, her confidence radiating as she speaks of her inevitable destiny. A glowing blue silhouette illustrates the heavy status and temple responsibilities Ravian was born to uphold as a saintess. Ravian proudly declares that no one in the entire empire is more suitable for the divine title than herself. Noah admits he admires her strength, yet his gaze remains guarded and distant during their tense moonlit confrontation. A soft slide sounds as Noah moves his hand, warning Ravian that greed for things not hers leads to regret. Ravian's face tightens with confusion and offense as she struggles to understand the prince's cryptic and challenging words. A soft rattle sounds as Noah walks away, telling her to think carefully while Ravian remains alone with her ambitions. Noah accepts her choice, but the white-haired girl senses he has become a completely different person. A look of shock crosses Ravian's face as Noah admits he thought their engagement was already over. Noah explains he broke the bond when he fell ill, while Ravian argues the temple and family demand its continuation. The black-haired boy smiles smugly, seemingly unbothered by the heavy political weight of their fading connection. Noah walks away nonchalantly, leaving a frustrated Ravian to wonder why he is suddenly so relaxed. Noah scoffs at the idea of clinging to her for magic as Ravian watches him with growing concern. Confident in his status, Noah declares he can find holy magic alone, leaving Ravian questioning his sudden boldness. Noah mocks her saintess ambitions, while Ravian warns that his mysterious illness will eventually force him back to her. Standing alone by the window at night, Noah looks out with a satisfied, knowing grin on his face. Ravian stares with intense red eyes as the black-haired boy challenges her certainty about the future. A vision of a woman with long, flowing brown hair appears, representing the steadfastness of the distant land. The scene focuses on the vibrant, pinkish-red eye of the white-haired girl as she contemplates the shift. Moonlight bathes the grand Tertia manor as the scene shifts to the restless energy within its majestic walls. Judy is shocked to hear rumors about a snake and immediately worries for his sister's safety. The butler explains Esther handled the situation, but the blue-haired boy reacts with a panicked, loud shout. Overwhelmed with concern, Judy demands to know why no one protected her from such a dangerous creature. Thoughts drift to Esther's evening routine as the boy learns she fell asleep shortly after reading. Determined not to wake her, Judy decides to check on his sister personally, despite the late hour. Running through the halls, Judy regrets his late arrival while worrying about the danger Esther faced alone. Quietly peeking through the door, the blue-haired boy hopes to find his sister resting. Judy suddenly stops in his tracks, his expression shifting from curiosity to utter confusion at the sight. In the moonlit room, he finds Esther huddled on the cold floor instead of her comfortable bed. Confused by her choice of sleeping spot, Judy cautiously approaches the bundled figure on the ground. He looks down at his sleeping sister, finding her unusual habit of floor sleeping both strange and endearing. As Judy reaches down, a massive black serpent with glowing eyes emerges from beneath the heavy blanket. Horror fills the room as the boy recoils in absolute terror from the giant snake's sudden movement. Esther wakes up groggy as Judy screams for her to run away from the creature beside her. Rubbing her eyes, a sleepy Esther looks up in confusion, unaware of the chaos she has caused. Judy lunges forward to shield his sister, pulling her into a protective embrace away from the snake. Frantic and sweating, the blue-haired boy demands to know why a monster is loose in her room. Judy holds Esther tight, still trembling with shock as he realizes she isn't afraid of the beast. His eyes wide with disbelief, the boy remains paralyzed by the sight of his sister's calm demeanor. Esther smiles warmly, introducing the large white serpent as her new pet to her horrified brother. A stunned chibi Judy can hardly process the idea of his sister keeping a snake as a companion. He warns her that bringing dangerous animals home will only lead to trouble with the manor staff. Esther reassures him, while Judy notes that the serpent's massive size suggests it is far from ordinary. Despite Esther's claims of the snake's obedience, Judy keeps a very safe distance from the white beast. The girl calls the snake Bam Bam, prompting Judy to marvel at the fact that she named it. Crouching nearby, Judy admits he's never seen anyone control a serpent so skillfully, praising his sister's talent. Esther asks when he returned, and Judy explains he came straight to see her after finishing his errands. Though happy he came, Esther worries the Grand Duke will never permit her to keep such a serpent. Judy questions why she still uses formal titles for their father, noting how distant the address sounds. Embarrassed, the girl admits she isn't used to calling him anything else, feeling like an outsider still. Judy hopes she will eventually feel like real family, finding the term Grand Duke far too formal. A spark of inspiration lights up the blue-haired boy's eye as he thinks of a clever solution. Leaning toward his sister, Judy excitedly announces that he has a brilliant idea to help her out. He whispers a secret plan into Esther's ear, causing the young girl to look on in surprise. Esther remains silent, processing her brother's suggestion with wide, sparkling eyes as the morning sun rises. Birds chirp outside the magnificent estate as a new day begins, filled with domestic peace and warmth. During breakfast, Judy laughs while recounting his victories at camp, while the Duke listens with quiet amusement. During dinner, the gray-haired father notes Dennis's growth, while the silver-haired boy proudly claims he is now taller than Esther. Dennis boasts about his new muscles, causing his glasses-wearing twin to regret missing the training camp before being taunted. Esther sits quietly at the table, looking nervous as she prepares to share her news with the family. An overhead view shows the family enjoying dinner as Esther hesitates to mention her new snake, Bam Bam, amidst the joy. Esther wonders if she should wait to speak, while Dennis notices her distress and prepares to intervene. Dennis flashes a mischievous grin and suddenly announces to the table that Esther has something important to say. As Dennis encourages his sister, Esther stammers, feeling the weight of the entire family's attention focusing on her. With a blush and a nervous look, Esther finally asks her father if she is allowed to raise an animal. The father's expression shifts to calm realization as he identifies that the animal Esther is referring to is a snake. A close-up reveals the father's shock as the reality of his daughter wanting a pet serpent sinks in. Esther clarifies that it is indeed a snake, while the father wonders if there is a new domestic species he missed. Dennis chimes in with a grin, confirming that the creature in question is actually a quite large snake. The father becomes visibly tense, realizing that Esther is talking about one of the Empire's most lethal venomous serpents. A firm refusal rings out as the father immediately denies the request, leaving Esther looking completely dejected and disheartened. Esther bites her lip in silence, struggling with the disappointment as the heavy atmosphere settles over the dining hall. The father leans forward with a serious expression, preparing to explain the reasoning behind his strict and protective decision. He explains the impossibility of controlling such a dangerous predator, while Esther reflects on her expectation of this very rejection. Dennis leans in to whisper a secret strategy, urging Esther to try the specific method he suggested earlier. Esther recalls her brother's warning about their father's rigidity and his advice that a simple request would never suffice. A memory shows Dennis revealing a secret way to win their father over that is guaranteed to succeed. Determination fills Esther's eyes as she prepares to use the ultimate weapon of cuteness to change her father's mind. The father waits in silence, unaware of the sentimental ambush his daughter is about to launch across the dinner table. Esther clasps her hands and acknowledges his care, before asking for a single exception to his strict household rules. Sparkling with hope, Esther looks up with wide eyes and softly calls him Daddy for the first time. Shocked by her own boldness, Esther immediately turns red and realizes she actually spoke the affectionate word aloud. Esther freezes in embarrassment, her eyes wide as she fears she may have crossed a line with her formal father. A stunned silence hangs over the room as the father stares back, leaving Esther panicked that he might be angry. The father asks her to repeat her words, causing Esther to jump as she worries about his reaction to her outburst. Much to her surprise, the father smiles warmly and tells her that calling him that was actually a very nice thing. He looks away pensively, reflecting on how the image of his daughter remains vividly etched in his protective heart. The father recalls Esther's painful and tearful past, realizing how far she has come in showing her true emotions. Seizing the moment, Esther asks once more if she can keep the snake, Bam Bam, under her personal care. The father chuckles and grants his permission, though he sternly warns her to remain cautious with the cold-blooded creature. Overjoyed, Esther realizes Dennis's secret plan worked perfectly as she nods enthusiastically in agreement with her father's terms. Dennis and his twin watch with satisfaction, happy to see their sister so delighted by the success of their plan. Hoping for a turn, Dennis asks Esther to call him by an affectionate name as well, but receives a confused look. A soft cough sounds as the father clears his throat awkwardly, while the boys wait for their own special acknowledgement. Esther tilts her head in confusion, unsure of why her brothers are suddenly acting so strange after the father's approval. The father rests his chin on his hand, wearing a subtle, triumphant smile as he relishes the moment. A sense of deep contentment washes over him as he realizes how happy he is to hear that name again. The scene shifts as Esther buries her face in her hands, completely overwhelmed by the embarrassment of the dinner conversation. Dennis's twin shrugs casually, while Dennis continues to watch Esther with a mix of amusement and brotherly affection. A sharp intake of breath sounds as the father attempts to maintain his composure despite the overwhelming joy in his heart. A heavy, relieved sigh sounds as the father lets out a massive exhale, trying to contain his immense emotional reaction. Blushing and giddy, the father repeats the word "daddy" to himself, completely charmed by Esther's sudden display of affection. The brown-haired butler smiles as he listens to the father's excitement over the young lady's heart-melting breakthrough. He observes that the long-sealed doors to Esther's soul are finally beginning to open for the rest of the family. An ethereal glow surrounds Esther, symbolizing the light and warmth she has brought to the mansion since her arrival. The butler laughs as the father enters a dazed state of happiness, comparing the moment to the twins' first words. He reflects on how much more lively the Tercia estate has become now that Esther is finally feeling at home. Standing in the opulent hall, the green-eyed Duke tells Ben how proud he feels watching Esther grow up. The Duke expresses a desire to give Esther a grand gift, mentioning a recently discovered diamond mine. With a serious expression, the dark-haired man declares his intention to give the diamond mine to Esther. Ben stares in absolute shock, his mouth hanging open as he struggles to process the Duke's extravagant proposal. Gesturing emphatically, Ben warns that such a massive and sudden gift might make the young girl feel pressured. The chibi Duke pauses, looking slightly deflated as he realizes he hadn't considered how Esther might react. Ben smiles at the Duke's growing doting nature, while the Duke argues Esther must learn to spend money. Looking through the manor's arched windows, the Duke orders Ben to bring the mine's documents to his office. A beautiful, sunny morning dawns over the Tercia estate as birds chirp cheerfully among the lush, manicured gardens. Sitting on a garden bench, Esther thinks about her upcoming homework and her responsibility to care for Bam Bam. Sudden voices calling out to her interrupt Esther's quiet reflection, causing her to look up in mild confusion. Hans clears his throat as he and a group of servants approach the young lady in the courtyard. Surrounded by blooming roses, Hans and two other servants politely ask if Esther would spend time with them. Hans kindly asks how her foot is healing, remembering how she helped him during the recent snake incident. Esther explains her worry over using divine power for the first time, her pink eyes soft with genuine concern. A beautiful cherry-topped cream cake is presented, featuring a chocolate plaque with the words Lady Esther inscribed on it. Esther's eyes widen in complete surprise as she gazes at the thoughtful and delicious gift from the manor staff. Kneeling before her, Hans offers the cake while apologizing for not properly thanking her for saving his life. Hans admits he would have died without her intervention, his expression full of deep gratitude and sincere respect. Looking at Esther with admiration, Hans thanks her once more for her bravery and for saving him from danger. Touched by their words, Esther realizes she is no longer despised, feeling overwhelmed by the servant's heartfelt praise. Esther begins to cry, causing a panic among the servants who worry she might dislike the cream cake. The servants watch in relief as a happy chewing sound fills the air, signaling Esther has started eating. A bright, joyful smile breaks across Esther's face as she cries tears of happiness, moved by their kindness. Her pink eyes sparkle with unshed tears, reflecting the warmth and acceptance she finally feels within the manor. Esther happily eats her cake when a voice calling out to her suddenly echoes through the quiet room. A maid watches as Esther continues her snack, the young girl promising to be careful while she eats. A quick chewing sound follows as Esther enjoys a macaron just before the door opens with a click. Dennis peeks through the door, his green eyes scanning the room as he looks for his younger sister. Entering the room, the lavender-haired boy finds Esther sitting on the sofa enjoying the cake Hans gave her. In a sweet moment, a chibi Esther offers a piece of her cake to Dennis, who happily accepts. Esther asks Dennis why he was looking for her as he adjusts his glasses with a thoughtful expression. Dennis's gaze shifts to the white snake nearby, questioning Esther about her unusual choice of pet, Bam Bam. Coiled comfortably in a basket, the white serpent rests as Dennis notes its impressive size and unique appearance. Dennis warns that the snake is a dangerous animal with lethal poison, urging Esther to raise it with care. He explains that Bam Bam belongs to a highly venomous species, though he notes how docile she seems with Esther. Reaching out, the boy gently pets the serpent's head, acknowledging that the creature truly seems to like his sister. Esther looks on with a surprised expression, taken aback by Dennis's sudden acceptance and interest in her pet. Dennis explains that while some things are confidential, she should always feel free to discuss her problems with him. A warm, gentle smile lights up Dennis's face as he offers his support and guidance to the young girl. Dennis declares that he is her brother, leaving Esther staring at him with wide, shocked eyes at his admission. The chibi lavender-haired boy gives a confident thumbs up, reinforcing his new role as Esther's protective older brother. Looking down at Bam Bam, Esther reflects on Dennis's words, feeling a strange and new sense of familial connection. The snake flickers its tongue as Esther notes that while she isn't crying, her heart feels strangely full. A tearful yet radiant smile grows on Esther's face as she embraces the lingering warmth of her brother's love. Memories of her past suffering and chains fade away as Esther realizes her current happiness is no longer an illusion. Surrounded by flowers, Esther sits peacefully with Bam Bam, finally feeling secure in the home she once feared. Thinking of Dennis's kind face, Esther cherishes the warm love she has shared with her new family members. Gazing at the Duke and Judy, Esther realizes that her dark thoughts of the past have finally vanished completely. Clutching her pink dress, Esther watches Bam Bam with a quiet resolve, ready to embrace the bright future ahead. Overwhelmed by memories of Ravian, Esther vows she will no longer let her life be stolen away. Now officially Esther Tercia, she realizes that even as a saintess, Ravian can no longer control her. Looking down at the white snake, Esther finds comfort in the strange companion she has chosen. Determined to build a future of happiness, Esther's pink eyes shine with a new, fierce resolve. She envisions a life where she is truly part of the family, alongside the Duke, Dennis, and Judy. Holding Bam Bam close, Esther contemplates her survival and a possible path toward revenge against her past tormentor. A powerful vow echoes as Esther declares she will never die at Ravian's hands again. The setting sun casts a golden glow over the magnificent temple as arrived a crucial meeting begins. Within the hallowed halls, priests gather in hushed conversation, their expressions heavy with hidden concerns. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as a hand slams the table, demanding silence from the whispering clergy. High Priest Chris Fodor calls the special meeting to order, preparing to discuss matters of great importance. The blonde Duke of Brannans makes a grand entrance, greeting the gathered priests with a confident smile. Adopting a humble tone, the Duke portrays himself as a devoted servant while being welcomed by the staff. High Priest Chris Fodor focuses the group's attention on the urgent business regarding the Empire's future. The atmosphere grows heavy as the High Priest reveals the rapidly declining health of the Saintess. Priest Lapis reports that all holy magic has failed to heal the Saintess, leaving the group in despair. Shock ripples through the room as the priests learn the Saintess has only 1 year left to live. To secure the future, the High Priest proposes immediately selecting and training new Saintess candidates. Murmurs of agreement fill the chamber as the priests realize they must act quickly to find a successor. The Duke of Brannans watches with interest, knowing the temple's power hangs in a delicate balance. Ravian is formally introduced as a candidate, her striking red eyes and purple hair radiating a chilling confidence. A sudden click startles Esther mid-snack, making her worry about the number of sweets she has eaten. Dennis enters the room, finding his sister enjoying cake on the sofa under the maid's watchful eye. In a heartwarming moment, Chibi Esther shares a bite of her cake with her older brother, Dennis. Dennis's attention shifts to the white snake, asking Esther about her unusual choice of pet, Bam Bam. A warm and flowery transition marks the quiet domestic peace within the walls of the Tercia Manor. Curled up in a basket, the white serpent Bam Bam rests peacefully, looking surprisingly small and harmless. Dennis notes the snake's extreme lethality, but observes how incredibly docile it remains in Esther's presence. Reaching out, the lavender-haired boy gently strokes Bam Bam's head, accepting the creature for his sister's sake. Dennis encourages Esther to rely on him, promising to help her with any problems she might face. With a kind and supportive smile, Dennis reaffirms his role as her protective and loving older brother. As Dennis leaves, a confused Esther wonders why everyone in the manor has become so incredibly kind. Memories of chains and dark prisons contrast sharply with her current life of tea and sunshine. Clutching Bam Bam, Esther feels a deep sense of security, realizing she finally has a real family. She reflects on the pain of her past, determined to cherish the happiness she has finally found. The haunting vision of Ravian returns, serving as a reminder of the danger Esther once faced. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, Esther's gaze remains steady and full of inner strength. Every fiber of her being is dedicated to creating a better life, far from her previous suffering. Her resolve is absolute, as she vows that death will not find her at Ravian's hands again. High Priest Chris Fodor calls for a private audience to discuss the selection of the next Saintess. The priests gather around the large table, awaiting the High Priest's news about the upcoming special day. With a steady stride, the blonde Duke of Brannans enters the room, his presence immediately commanding attention. The Duke is warmly received by the priests, who express deep gratitude for his dedication to the temple. Smiling pleasantly, the blonde man plays the part of a sincere believer, while maintaining his noble poise. High Priest Chris Fodor settles into the meeting, urging everyone to focus on the most critical matters. The room falls silent as the High Priest details the alarming health crisis facing Saintess Cespia. Reports confirm that even the most advanced holy fires have failed to halt the Saintess's terminal illness. Panic begins to set in as the realization dawns that the Saintess only has 1 year remaining. High Priest Chris Fodor silences the crowd, advocating for the immediate education of potential Saintess candidates. While wearing a sun hat, Esther is approached by a man who recognizes her distinctive pink eyes. Esther is taken aback, questioning how the brown-haired man before her already knows her name. The man introduces himself as Palin, the butler and manager of the hut where Noah is resting. Bowing politely, Esther introduces herself before Palin leads her inside the quiet and flower-filled cottage. Palin explains that Noah is currently resting, but would be delighted to know that Esther has finally arrived. Clutching her small suitcase, Esther enters the room to find the dark-haired boy fast asleep. Esther watches Noah's peaceful face, her expression softening with concern for the boy she came to visit. Palin leaves a bell for assistance, explaining he has work to do while Esther stays with Noah. With a final bow, the butler departs, leaving Esther alone in the quiet company of the sleeping boy. A soft rustle sounds as Esther turns her gaze back to the bed, where Noah remains motionless. She reflects on how Noah always seems to be sleeping, just like when they first encountered each other. Sitting beside him, Esther worries that she cannot finish his portrait if his eyes remain closed. She contemplates using her unique healing powers to aid him, hearing reports of his persistent illness. An ethereal glow surrounds Esther as she realizes her own inner strength is beginning to drain away. A sudden flicker of movement follows as Noah's eyes slowly flutter open to find Esther watching him. Esther jumps with a startled, "Ah!" as she realizes the boy has suddenly awakened from his deep slumber. Noah wakes fully, and Esther apologizes for disturbing him while explaining she came to finish his portrait. A warm, charming smile spreads across Noah's face as he looks up at the girl who kept her promise. Noah finds Esther's commitment amusing while she shyly asks if he is well enough to sit up. He thanks her for being the reason he woke up, admitting it has been several days since then. Esther turns away, asking softly if he is ready to proceed with finishing the last part of his picture. In a cheerful moment, Noah agrees to the task as they prepare to head out into the garden. Looking at Esther with a serious gaze, Noah mentions that he has a special favor to ask. A soft "wow" escapes Esther's lips as she takes in the breathtaking, sun-drenched garden full of roses. Noah explains that this hidden floral paradise is his personal place of relaxation within the estate. Esther stops and calls his name, causing Noah to turn back with a gentle, curious expression. A soft blush colors Esther's cheeks as the atmosphere between them becomes quiet and surprisingly intimate. Noah encourages her to speak comfortably while she asks a serious question about his frequent sleeping. He is delighted by her interest in him, confirming that his deep sleep is a regular occurrence. Noah admits he is terminally ill, forced to spend the majority of his life in a state of slumber. He asks Esther if she is familiar with the legendary and cruel affliction known as the Curse of the Gods. Esther is shocked, recalling how the curse forces living beings to burn through their own life force. Illustrations of animals symbolize the disease that cruelly burns through the vitality of its victims. Esther reflects on reading about this rare illness at the temple, surprised to encounter it in person. Noah reveals that without a constant supply of divine power, his life would likely end in an instant. Esther wonders if her presence is draining her magic, but Noah insists his life is not regrettable. He confesses that he was essentially abandoned in this holy place, barely surviving until this very moment. Esther looks at Noah with a mixture of shock and pity as his tragic past is revealed. Noah reminds her of the favor he mentioned earlier, his tone growing serious as he approaches. Stepping closer, Noah looks Esther directly in the eyes and asks if she is willing to help him. He assures her it won't be difficult work, urging her not to feel stressed by his request. Noah expresses his deep hope that Esther can stay by his side for the foreseeable future. Flustered, Esther listens as Noah explains he needs her because she is full of holy magic. She realizes her power is the reason she feels drained, acting as his vital life support. Ethereal flowers surround Noah as Esther recalls he could only survive half a day with regular holy power. She understands the scarcity of holy water, finally grasping why Noah desperately needs her assistance. A shadow falls over Esther's face as she suspiciously wonders if Noah knows she is a saintess. Panic sets in as Esther fears Noah might be taking advantage of her magic for a future betrayal. Noah suddenly leans over Esther, his dark hair falling as he interrupts her panicked internal thoughts. Esther blinks in confusion as Noah dismisses his sudden closeness as simply brushing away some dust. Noah gently takes Esther's hands, telling her to ignore the nonsense and feel free to refuse him. Noah assures Esther he isn't trying to make her uncomfortable, noting she is his only hope. Urging her to speak freely, Noah expresses his fear of Esther becoming tired of him. Esther remains pensive, her expression unreadable as she considers the weight of Noah's desperate request. Realizing Noah's survival depends on her magic, Esther questions why she shouldn't prioritize helping him. Esther explains she needs permission to visit, but Noah reacts solemnly to the mention of her family. Seeking a compromise, Esther suggests visiting occasionally, if her father allows it, her eyes filled with hope. Noah feels relieved by Esther's agreement, admitting he had no other options if she had refused. Encouraging Esther to rely on him later, Noah leaves her wondering what he might do for her. A peaceful breeze rustles through the lush green trees, marking a shift in the quiet atmosphere. A sudden, brilliant flash of light startles Esther as a mysterious, glowing orb illuminates the clearing. Esther is struck by a sharp realization as a powerful, unsettling vision flashes across her mind. Noticing her distress, Noah asks Esther what is wrong as leaves swirl around them in the wind. Confused by the sensation of being watched, Esther asks about eyes, though Noah sees no one else. Esther reflects on the intense connection she felt, wondering about the source of that mysterious, divine gaze. In a distant chamber, the ailing Saintess Cespia wakes with a start, her eyes wide with shock. Cespia witnesses a vision of Esther amongst thorns, realizing the girl is destined to be the next saintess. Baffled, Cespia questions why Esther, rather than Ravian, has been chosen as her holy successor. Reflecting on her terminal illness, Cespia's thoughts are interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Cespia is stunned to hear Ravian being congratulated on becoming a saintess while she still lives. Listening from her bed, Cespia realizes the betrayal as Ravian thanks a priest for his help. A chilling realization hits Cespia as Ravian plans to increase her medicine to quicken her demise. Horrified, Cespia understands that Ravian's supposed cure has been a slow-acting poison all along. Trembling with grief, Cespia drops a framed picture, her heart heavy with the weight of the conspiracy. Heavy footsteps approach the door, and Cespia freezes, desperate to keep her awareness a secret. The door creaks open as Ravian peeks in, checking if the Holy Lady has finally woken up. Cespia feigns sleep, her mind racing with the dark truth she just uncovered about those she trusted. Determined to thwart their treacherous plan, Cespia resolves to keep her recovery and awareness hidden. The scene shifts back to Esther, seen from behind in her elegant, pale blue ruffled gown. Turning with a curious look, Esther's bright pink eyes reflect her growing confidence and inner strength. The grand Tercia estate stands magnificent under a clear blue sky, framed by vibrant green foliage. Dorothy the maid is overjoyed as Esther twirls in a stunning new red and gold dress. Dorothy gushes over the Duke's lavish gift, and Esther thanks her while admiring her reflection. Esther wonders where her father intends to take her, especially after preparing such beautiful new clothes. Dorothy holds Esther's hands, expressing her sincere delight at how lovely the young princess looks. Surrounded by blooming roses, Esther hums softly, feeling a sense of peace in her new home. The Duke of Tercia waits patiently amidst the flowers, looking regal and handsome in his dark attire. Spotting her father, Esther rushes down the grand staircase and asks if he has been waiting long. The Duke smiles warmly at his daughter as a servant announces that their carriage is ready. Esther asks about their destination, but the Duke offers only a gentle, mysterious smile in response. Esther looks up with a questioning gaze, eager to discover the surprise her father has planned. The carriage winds through a rugged mountain path until the Duke helps a curious Esther step out. The Duke points toward the towering cliffs, announcing their plan to climb the mountain together. The Duke's protective aura flares as he dismisses his eager escort knights, offering to carry Esther himself. Terrified knights back away from the Duke's intense glare, while Esther watches their interaction in confusion. Esther gently tells her father he needn't carry her, surprising him with her sudden display of independence. Insisting she can walk alone, Esther strikes a determined pose, framed by a cheerful floral background. The Duke looks visibly disappointed at being refused, while the initially triumphant knights feel a sting of rejection. Brushing off the awkward moment, the group begins their trek through the dense mountain foliage. The Duke encourages a tiring Esther, noting they have nearly reached the end of the difficult climb. Wiping away sweat, Esther wonders with mounting curiosity what special sight her father wants to show her. The gray-haired man lifts Esther easily, commenting on her lightness while she reacts with a startled, blushing face. Looking surprised, Esther is carried through the breezy mountain air as her father wears a subtle, satisfied smile. A bustling village set against the mountainside reveals a sprawling excavation site filled with busy workers and wooden structures. A rhythmic clink sounds as miners work the earth, swinging pickaxes to excavate the glowing blue diamonds within. As they overlook the site, Esther asks about the digging, and the father confirms it is a diamond mine. Stunned by the revelation, Esther freezes when her father casually declares that the entire mine now belongs to her. Esther protests that the gift is far too much, but the Duke firmly insists the mine is hers. With a soft expression, the Duke reaffirms her importance to him, warmly stating that she is his daughter. Memories of joining the Grand Tertia family play out, marking Esther's transition into becoming the Duke's only daughter. Esther swallows nervously and resolves to be more confident, despite her lingering anxiety about her new status. Esther wonders if such massive gifts are standard for nobles, feeling that a whole diamond mine is overwhelming. The Duke watches her silently, carefully tailoring his words to ensure Esther doesn't feel burdened by his lavish affection. The escort knights are floored by the Duke's extreme pampering before reporting that the tea party preparations are finished. A celebratory ta-da sounds as the staff presents a garden tea party filled with pastries, fruit, and elegant tea. Esther finds the treats delicious, while the Duke watches her fondly, pleased that she is finally eating well. The Duke presents a small chest, opening it to reveal a collection of large, sparkling diamonds for Esther. A soft click sounds as the Duke closes the jewelry box, finished with his display of affection for now. The closed box rests on the table as Esther looks on, still processing the weight of her father's generosity. The Duke smiles warmly, explaining that he brought her here solely to create more happy memories for her. Touched by his sincerity, Esther stares back with wide eyes, her heart swelling with the warmth of his words. An older man with a gray beard and glasses clasps his hands, questioning if his message is being received.